Oh, here we go. I've got it. I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or contract negotiations with non-union personnel if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. To discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. To discuss strategy with respect to litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. And to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and to return to open session thereafter.
I have a question before we do the roll call. Is
I'll second it first so you can open it for discussion.
Okay. Is 9 Air Road on there?
Yes. Litigation.
Okay, motion's been made. Cindy?
Yes.
Chuck? Oh, yeah.
He is there.
Chase?
Yes.
Paul?
Says yes,
Yes.
sorry.
Joe? Yep. Okay, we're all set for executive session.
Okay, see you all on the other side.
Hey,
Chairman.
God, my technology is horrible. So we want to open the meeting and do the Pledge of Allegiance and do the election of officers?
Joe, do you have your flag?
You bet.
Never a doubt.
All right, I'd like to call a meeting of the Board of Selectmen for March 18th, 2020 to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next thing is normally this takes place at the beginning of May, but since we didn't have the elections, it's taking place now. I just want to take the opportunity to thank our board for being so helpful during my chairmanship and everyone involved, and Nina and Joe, and I'll miss my 3 times a day phone calls from Nina. But I would look for a motion for the new chair for the upcoming year.
I'll nominate Chairwoman Napoli.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Let's see. Cindy?
Yes.
Chase?
Muted.
You there, Chase?
Yes, sorry.
Paul?
Yes.
Chuck?
Chuck's a yes.
Joe? Aye. So it carries. Cindy, it's all yours.
Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Don't be so happy, Joe. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we have 2 more positions to fill on the board. The second one is for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Charles DeCoste.
Ooh, formal.
We have a nomination. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have motion's been made and seconded by the Board of Selectmen to elect Chuck DeCoste as vice chairman of the board for a term of 1 year commencing immediately. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
Mr. Glady,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste.
Chuck's a yes.
Yes. And Cindy Napoli is a yes. So the next position that we are going to elect is the clerk. Do we have any nominations for that position?
I'll nominate Mr. Glavy to be the clerk.
I'll second that. So Mr. Glavy,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's a yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
and Cindy Napoli is yes. So excellent. We are reorganized for another year. Looking forward to it. So next up, I will read tonight's agenda. If I may, I don't think there's any other to do on that. So welcome to tonight's meeting. As Mr. Knox had stated, we just did our annual election of the chair and vice chair and clerk for the Board of Selectmen. The next item we will do is a reading of the mail, but at the time being, I'd just like to read through the agenda. We're going to have department and board member updates, band and bond issuances, and a vote to approve those issuances. We're going to set the transfer station hearing date of June 1st, 2020, and the fiscal year transfer station fees. There's going to be staff updates on COVID-19 if needed, a general discussion regarding COVID-19 if needed, a continued discussion of town meeting logistics relating to COVID-19. I know that many people are probably tuned in to hear that discussion. We're going to continue discussion on operational considerations for reopening town offices. At 7 p.m., we're going to have public input and members updates. At 7:05, we're going to be holding a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Director of Budget and Finance to further discuss the annual town meeting warrant and report. At 7:30, the annual town meeting warrant and report discussion will involve the proposed Article 28, general bylaw changes, chief procurement officer, and a review of the warrant to reopen the warrant, place articles, close the warrant, determine the order of the articles, vote recommendations, and finalize the town meeting report. At 8 p.m., we're going to have an update regarding the Harvest Club for cultivation site at 1 Monarch Drive to discuss the outline and next steps. At 8:15, the town administrator report will include a settlement agreement on the Houghton Building painting contract. We're going to have an LCT intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough review, Cobb Lane driveway relocation agreement, authorized town administrator to sign. The police department received a donation from Middlesex Savings Charitable Foundation. We're going to vote to accept that. And we're also going to discuss an increase in vacation carryover limits and short-term disability bank usage that has been discussed. And then at 8:25, we will review our minutes and then we will adjourn. So I'm going to turn it over to the town administrator at this time. Nina, a reading of the mail.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We didn't have anything in the packet, but this afternoon we did receive information from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which I will email to the board in reference to the Pepperell Hydro, I assume some sort of infrastructure there. And there's no action that is necessary on the part of the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next item is department board updates. Do we have Mr. Venuti on the call?
I'm here.
Perfect. Hi there. So you want to lead us?
Madam Chairwoman.
You want to lead us into this, Steve, please?
Sure. We have two issues we're going to talk about tonight. First is a ban of short-term borrowing for $4,986,000 at 1.75%. It has a net interest coupon of 1.139 and some change. Very good rate, a little less than what we got about a month ago. Its issue date is May 22nd and matures on 11/20/20. It's a rollover of a previous ban that we issued last June for two projects, the library design and the Wickham Ave well. The library design is $1,494,000. Wickham Ave well is $1,993,000 for the water department. And we've added another project to it, the water treatment plan for the PFAS issue, $1,499,000, again, for the water department. We structured these short-term debts that we have to all mature on November 20th, 2020. We have the SOAR design ban that we issued last month, also maturing on November 20th. At that point in time, we can roll things over again, reissue some new funds for the library. For the PFAS issue, Nick is thinking that he's going to be reissuing things through the Mass Clean Water Trust. So that'll give us some time to do that. Just to refresh your memories on the library, this $1,494,000 that we're rolling over now until November. In November, we'll probably be issuing or adding to that another $5.2 million, because remember, we have to front the money from the state, and then as these things pay down, as we receive the money from the state, we'll pay down the ban. In 2024, we're thinking that the final bond for the library would be $2.7 million. So speaking of bonds, we're also issuing on Friday, 5/22, maturing on May 1st, 2040, $7,345,000 bond at a 1.69 and change true interest cost. It's a refinance of a bond we issued in 2010, which was mainly for the police station. And this reissuance is going to save the town, or the taxpayers of the town, because it's a debt exclusion item, around $40,000 per year for the next 10 years. We received about $1 million in premium on this issue, which we used to pay down the principal on these. For example, the police station still had $2.8 million left on it. We're able to refinance this and reissue it at $2.4 million. So it's a very good deal. The library, we're taking $5 million, taking advantage of this rate environment, issuing $5 million of the library project right now. And because we're applying the premium, it's actually $4,595,000. And we'll have $405,000 in premium that will apply also to the project. So 2 great pieces of information, 2 great little pieces of news for us, great rates. We missed the volatility in the market that was existent a few weeks ago, and I think our timing was just about right. Stock market was up 900 points today, which means those yields that we got are probably out of the water right now, going up a little higher. So that's great news. We timed it very well. I just want to remind the board, tomorrow morning, we're going to need you guys to come in before 10 o'clock, because I got to get these things out to FedEx. We're under a little time crunch here. So if you can text me, I sent my cell number to you previously. Just give me a little heads up before you come in. We'll be down in 103. And we'll try and time it so everybody comes in one at a time and you can take care of the signatures. It's a lot of documents to sign. So just be ready.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Steve.
Yep.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah, did you just recently send that email with your cell phone number on it for a text, Steve? I'm looking through. All right, okay.
You got it?
I got you, yep.
Okay.
You don't want us to state it on camera here?
Nah, I'll pass.
Wait until he's a little closer to that consulting role, then.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Excellent work as always, Steve. Thank you. Thank you very
Steve.
much for that update and always looking out for us. We appreciate it.
I'm going to read the motion, Madam Chair.
Please.
I probably should have thought about my eyesight before I agreed to this clerk's job. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt the form of the vote prescribed by bond counsel, a copy of which is attached hereto and made part hereof. 1, relative to the sale of a $4,986,000 bond anticipation note of the town for the following projects. 1, $1,494,000 Library building design project authorized May 6th, 2019 special town meeting, Article 5, to $1,993,000 new well field and water treatment plant at Whitcomb Avenue, authorized May 7, 2018 annual town meeting, Article 19, and 3, $1,499,000 water treatment facility authorized October 28, 2019 special town meeting, Article 12, dated May 22nd, 2020, and payable November 20, 2020 to Oppenheimer and Company at par plus premium with a net interest cost of 1.13950%. And 2, relative to the sale of a $7,345,000 general obligation bond of the town for the following projects. 1, refund $2,750,000 general obligation bonds dated February 1st, 2010, and 2, $4,595,000 library project authorized October 28, 2019, special town meeting, Article 13, dated May 22nd, 2020, and maturing May 1st, 2040, to Intel-FC Stone Financial Inc. at 113.1909% and a true interest cost of 1.6979740%.
Second?
Excellent. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
and Cindy is yes. So the motion passes unanimously as written. Thank you very much.
Great news.
So we are on to item 3B, set transfer station hearing date of June 1st, 2020, and fiscal year 21 transfer station fees. And we have Mr. Stoddard is on the call with us.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Chris.
Hey, Chris.
So basically we're here. We can kind of do it any way you want. We can discuss the proposal we have in front of you now, or just set the hearing date, and then we can have that conversation on the date of the hearing, and kind of leave it up to you guys to decide what you want to do.
Right. So you provided us excellent information, as always. So I didn't know if the board had any additional questions for Chris prior to and in preparation of the public hearing, or if we're okay with the information that he's provided and we're just ready to set the date.
Madam Chair.
Certainly.
I think what Chris presented us was pretty straightforward and clear, but not everybody may have immediate access to it, although they could get it on our website. So I wonder if maybe Chris could just summarize his recommendation to us so folks can hear it in advance of the hearing and have time to think about whether or not they want to chime in at that time.
Yeah, definitely. So this year has been kind of unique, where if we look at the numbers for this year, we are running under budget, but a lot of that, it has to do with the fact that basically we shut the transfer station down for the last couple months. So we haven't been taking in waste, so we haven't had to be hauling it away. What ends up happening is Groton has actually shut us off from hauling all of our recyclables to them. So what we've had to do is call Waste Management and have them start hauling it up to their Bill Ricca facility. What that's done is that's caused us to have a over 300% increase in our hauling fees, and over 300% increase in our recycling disposal fees. So as of right now, based on the same comparable number of sticker sales and bag fees, we're going to be running about $100,000 deficit next year. And it's always been the policy of the town to have the transfer station fees cover the costs. So having $100,000 deficit, well, obviously we have to make that up somewhere. We typically present 3 different options, try to balance sticker fee increases with and bag fee increases, then also show if we just raised sticker fees or if we just raised bag fees. Obviously my recommendation would kind of be try to split it. So we're proposing to do a $20 increase to the hold on, I'm sorry. I gotta get the thing here. The full price stickers, $20 increase to the senior stickers, and then a 75-cent increase to the bag fees. What that does is that covers that $100,000 deficit. What we've also proposed is kind of something unique, not necessarily for next year because the capital and everything's pretty much solidified. What our idea would be is potentially for FY22 purchasing our own roll-off truck. We've run the numbers and we're looking at approximately a 3.5-year payback for that truck because we save approximately $55,000 a year.
In hauling.
So just in hauling costs alone, yeah. So that's an option too. We can look at. If we did that, our FY22 numbers, we could end up dropping the bag fees back down to what we have for FY20. FY21, excuse me. So it's a substantial number, but it's also a substantial investment. So that's something that the board we have time to discuss, obviously. So that's it kind of in a nutshell.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, if I could
Certainly.
jump in. Chris, you always try to find creative ways. I know you had mentioned, I think it was on one of these calls, or maybe it was just you and I speaking, of doing something to try to recycle glass. You were looking at getting a glass crusher for all of our glass. So I appreciate you being creative and trying to find alternatives and ways to try to help us to get around a problem. Yeah, when you're faced with problems, you always seem to adapt and overcome in some way, shape, or form, and that's very much appreciated. One thing I'd like to throw out there for the board to consider is one of the things we hear often is, what are we getting for our taxes, and stop going up on the bag fees and things like that. If it's truly $100,000, is that something that we could subsidize until such time as Chris would be able to put a roll-off into the budget, and basically he'd be able to absorb within 3 years, get that payback for you said 3 years for the payback on the roll-off, Chris?
Yeah, it's just over 3 years.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if the board would entertain the possibility of subsidizing that $100,000 so that we don't have to go up, because it's a tax for the residents. I mean, $25 to go up on a sticker for anybody is a lot, but certainly for the seniors to go up $25 on a sticker for the transfer station is going to have more of an impact than most. So appreciate everything that you've laid out for us, Chris, but I'm just throwing that out as an additional option that there might be the possibility that we could do something there. I'll open that up for discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that's done too, but I get a lot of comments about the prices of the bags.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. I can't afford to keep on paying $3.25 it is now. If I start telling people it's going to be $4 a bag, I'll never hear the end of it.
What can we do to follow up on Chuck's suggestion? I'd like to see a proposal on that. I'm certainly sympathetic to it. It just requires, where it is we're going to draw that funding from. And again, as you pointed out, Chuck, this is in the interim until the savings kicks in from the hauling,
Right.
the self-hauling. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I bet.
Kind of stop the bleeding.
Yeah, right.
I think we have a few options. Cheryl Herrick Stella, our finance director, is on the line, and we could bring her in for an initial conversation. While we're bringing her in, thoughts that come to my mind is potentially incorporating something into this annual town meeting warrant, or potentially incorporating something into the anticipated fall special town meeting warrant. But I would defer to Cheryl.
Coming on. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I missed just a couple of minutes of as I was rejoining. So just wanted to, Nina, if you wouldn't mind just repeating what you said real quick.
Sure. Yeah, I just said that while you were joining, I see, subject to any disagreement you have in terms of accounting requirements, I see potentially two options. One is a modification to this town if the board wishes to subsidize the transfer station costs. One is a modification to this year's warrant to in some way to incorporate an additional X number of dollars from the general fund. Or the second one could be to bring it to the fall town meeting. Those are the ones that immediately came to my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nina. And I think if I had a preference, given where we're at with the budget, that, you know, my preference would be that it would be something that we bring forward at fall town meeting. And at that point, we could adjust the, you know, we'll have a better sense again as far as where we're at generally as a town, and we can certainly adjust the operating budget for the transfer station at that time.
Just so everybody does know, purchasing a truck like this is just like our big trucks. It takes upwards of 4 to 6 months for it to come in. So even if we were to make the decision to want to put it on this warrant, you're still looking at November or December at the earliest before we'd have it. So we are going to incur, no matter what we do decide, we are going to incur costs for a 6-month time period to have somebody else hauling our stuff. The nice thing is, though, in that proposal, we are including, and we don't have to, which would show a faster savings. We are showing a $10,000 a year, what I'm calling a capital recovery reserve. So that way in 20 years, when this truck is dead, we have the money set aside to buy a new one. So we don't have to have this conversation again, hopefully.
Okay.
Chris, would that truck increase your labor costs appreciably, or would you be able to fold those in?
No, as of right now, based on how much we haul a month, I think I know I can do it, haul with it'll take me 2 days to haul the materials. My plan was just to use existing highway department staff. Typically what we do is we make three-man crews, and at any given point, either somebody's on vacation or has training, or we can never really make a even number of 3-man crews. So we always have kind of an odd man out, so to speak. And almost all of my staff has the proper licenses to operate the truck. So we would just do it with existing staff.
Okay, so we'd just be looking at the capital. Cool.
Yeah, correct.
Good question.
Okay. All right. So any other comments or questions from the board?
I'm just gonna look at, Cheryl's gonna put together that potential model for us to subsidize it. Is that what we're looking at, or?
Right, but it's her recommendation to take that up in the fall. It's my understanding.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we're charged with right now is setting the dates to have the hearing, but we kind of have to have that. We have to know in order for us to have that hearing and set the fees, we're
Right.
gonna have to know what our charge is.
Right.
If we're planning on going for the subsidy in the fall, then Chris has that information ahead of time, so anything we present to the public will be impacted by that.
Right.
Right.
Yep. So we'll set the hearing for June 1st. Cheryl will prepare that information to present at the hearing at that time. Thank you. And we'll set the fees at the time and review Cheryl's proposal as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
Sounds
Good. So we have a
Thank you all.
motion.
Is there a motion? Well,
There
I don't
is.
think there is. Oh, all right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code Chapter 181 to schedule a public hearing for Monday, June 1st, 2020 at 7:30 PM on the fee structure and regulations for use of the Town of Littleton Transfer Station effective July 1st, 2020, and further to invite input from the general public, the Board of Health, and Highway Department.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's in favor.
Mr. Gerbig,
Shay says aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
and Cindy is aye. Are we supposed to be saying aye or yes? Are we supposed to be saying yes?
My understanding is that I is easier to understand for minutes. I'm
I
sorry,
feel like
yes is easier to understand for minutes.
All right,
Apologies.
perfect.
Kind of feel like a pirate, though.
All right, excellent. So motion's been made, seconded, and approved by the board as written. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cheryl, very much.
I have a minor technical question on this. Historically, the town has advertised the hearing in the newspaper, but there is no requirement that we could find under any general laws, under any policies. So we assume that advertisement is not necessary. We can
I
certainly
would
put
say
it
if
on
we could,
LCTV and put it on the town bulletin board and the website, of course. I meant to say that as well.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable to the board?
Sure
works
does.
for me.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, that seems fine.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So we are on to item number 3C and D. We're going to start with staff updates on COVID-19 if needed. I don't know if we have any staff members on the call that wanted to speak.
I know we have Alicia Day on and Tim.
Okay.
Oh, Husky.
Tim's muted.
My house.
Hi, Alicia.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So I think one of the big things that came out today with the governor's speech this afternoon was the opening of beaches starting on May 25th. So that would be Memorial Day right around the week or the week here. So I know that we're on the agenda for June 1st to have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom about beach operations, but now we have a week's worth of a gap here that we just kind of wanted to go over some, I don't want to call them emergency operations, but you know, we do expect that there's going to be a lot of people down at the beach for Memorial Day, and it is something that we do either have to manage it or hard close the beach. That's kind of what the ruling says. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim because I know he's been a lot more involved in this process than I have. So go ahead, Mr. Mahowski.
I know you guys got a packed agenda, so I'll kind of just go over the high level kind of asks and just kind of what we're looking for, and then just turn it over to you guys for questions. So essentially what Alicia was talking about is, I'll get this forwarded off, but you know, the state did release the guidance that you can go to online on the website Reopen Mass and find all of the outdoor recreation pieces. In that guidance, beaches were one of the things that's allowed to get out of the gate on Monday, as well as some outdoor programming, some individual sports, and some other things that are going on. And really where we're at right now is, you know, I sent the documents up that we're going to discuss next week, which give us our, you know, operating ideas and where do we want to land and what do we want to, you know, charge or not charge for this year. What are we, you know, looking to cover, or what are we looking to make for revenue? And, you know, at this time, we're at a critical juncture where, you know, there's the spending freeze. And now, you know, in order to start getting some of this stuff off the ground, we have to have bodies in order to man the beach essentially, and start promoting these social distancing, creating the social distance boxes, if you will, that give us our 12-foot spacing between groups. And we also have to enforce that our parking lot operate at no more than 50% capacity for the park. With that said, you know, things that need to get done, we need to get the buoy lines up. We have to get the bathhouse open and start putting up the signage and laying out the social distancing guidelines that will be required for that if we so choose to open it. But there's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, I can definitely get out there and do it, but we're going to need a second set of hands in order to achieve that goal. And if we have any hope of, you know, making some revenue to help fill that deficit that we've asked you guys for this year. But most importantly, to start getting the ball rolling so that we're not in the same financial situation for fiscal year 21, because, you know, we're $40,000 in the hole on this back end of money that we haven't brought in right now, which will continue to perpetuate into next year's fiscal budget if we don't start to figure out how we're going to start generating the projected revenue that we had put forth in the budget that's on the warrant article.
And to be clear, the $40,000 is the amount of money that we had already collected up to this point last year in just the sales for the beach memberships at this point. So that's not including the sailing program, nor anything from the Snack Shack as well.
Correct. And just to clarify, I did speak with Jim Garaffi today. We did get the green light if we wanted to open the Snack Shack as well and start selling novelty items like we normally do, which is prepackaged things like chips, soda, water. And then the other piece to that was if we wanted to, sailing is actually one of the things that's on the list that can be open as soon as Monday. So if we were to come up with a sailing program where one person was on each vessel, that is another opportunity that we could kind of start going with to generate some revenues that we were looking at. So that's really kind of where we're at. And like I said, what we're bringing to you is this guidance is now out there, and we just need a starting point, especially with the spending freeze going on. Is, you know, where do we go from here? How do we start getting bodies, and how do we start stocking some of these areas that we need to stock, and spending a little bit of the money that we need to spend to get the materials to create these social distance areas and create some of the boundaries we need for the park.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Does the beach usually open officially for Memorial Day?
Yeah, so typically we open on Memorial Day weekend, and then we're weekends only through the end of the school year.
Okay. I know that we have it scheduled to meet with you to discuss this in more detail. I did take the liberty of, I did review the recommendations put forward by the state, not the most recent recommendations, but the recommendations that we had discussed, information we had been provided with previously. And it basically, the recommendation was 200 square feet per person was one of the things I read. Do you recall that?
That sounds about right. What I remember was no more than 200 people per acre, but that was kind of, I think, about the same number.
Okay. So what I did was I reached out to Chris Stoddard because he's so resourceful, and I had him calculate the square footage of the beach so that we could kind of come up with a number of how many people could actually fit on the beach at the same time. And so he did provide me with that information, and I can definitely share it with you if you haven't already made those calculations yourselves. But it's basically based on his calculations, it would be 80 people could be on the beach at the same time using this 200 square foot per person spacing recommendation, and then 15 people on the playground at the same time. And so one of the other things that I looked at was what other communities are doing with respect to regulating the number of people utilizing the beach at the same time. I looked at Walden Pond, specifically in Concord. And what they're doing is they're only letting so many people on the beach at the same time. And then when the beach is full, they just send out a tweet, or they put out a notification that the beach is full and no more people are permitted on the ground. So I didn't know if that is something that might work in the short term. I know you sell the beach passes, and that might complicate things a little bit more or make it easier. I don't know, but I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so I had roughly the same numbers that Chris had put out there. Mainly for us, the thing that was put out is you can't operate at more than 50% of your parking lot capacity. Okay. So, that comes into semantics there. So is it our actual parking lot? Are we considering town road, which we've kind of closed off to traffic for the current time being? But yeah, I was right around that 80 to 110 number. And just to clarify, the playground will remain closed. That area is actually going to be completely blocked off for when we do decide to open up. So the park area behind the playground, I think, if that was opened up, that could accommodate some more. But as far as beachfront, I definitely was right around Chris's number.
Okay.
And I think one of the ways that we were trying to operate was kind of similar to what you had spoken to, Cindy, in that we were talking about doing the daily pass rate, charging that, and then either doing blocks of time and saying, you guys are here at this 2-hour block, and then, kind of rotating through. So that was one of the original plans that Tim had, was actually doing a reservation type of system. So they could do it through our online system that we currently have, where you would kind of, already prepay that ahead of time. You'd have your receipt and could show, hey, I've got my block of time for this, chunk of time. And then an announcement would be made, and those people would be given 15 minutes to get to their car and pack up for them to leave, and the next wave to come in. So that was one way we were thinking about trying to control and manage the crowds that would be there. But we could also, go to a system like that where, if somebody leaves, we can say, hey, there's some space open, or, at this point, we're kind of trying to figure out how to make the operations work for the week up until we have the full-on discussion with all of you.
Right.
The biggest piece too was equity, right? Because the Walden Pond system, if you just decide to wake up and get there at the time the gate opens, you could do that every day and everybody doesn't get a fair shake.
Right.
Right. So you're looking for some guidance from the board in the interim prior to our scheduled discussion, just because of this latest news. And because what's the alternative? The alternative is that leave the beach unstaffed. You'd shut it down.
Yeah. So it's got to be managed or close it to the public.
Is that one of the state regulations? Is that part of their guidance, or?
So somebody needs to enforce the social distancing, and at that point, that would either need to be us or the PD. And we've seen beaches all around the country, from Florida to California, that people have proven that when the nice weather comes and there's a body of water to go to, that hasn't been done well, and we've seen beaches open and reclose just as quickly as they've reopened. So my whole thing throughout this, even for the past month, has been to try to get a good plan in place so that we're ready for that, rather than having to send the crowds, send the masses away.
Right.
Come up with the plan.
Right.
So good.
No, I was just so the social distancing is a recommendation by the governor, though. It's not an order, correct? I'm just trying to
an order
differentiate between the two.
So the beach guidance is very clear on what the social distancing has to be.
Okay.
It's 12 foot between each set of beach goers, with no more than 10 being in a group. And you have to wear a mask if you are actively walking around. If you're sitting in your area or you're swimming, you do not have to wear a mask. But if you are in the water, you also have to practice social distancing.
Okay. Okay, Mr. DeCoste.
Tim and Alicia, what do you anticipate the number of employees you're going to need? So essentially what I'm backing into, what is the cost going to be in order to operate the beach?
Yeah. I'll let Tim speak to that, because that's his portion of, what we do at the Department. Aquatics is under his purview. But I think at this point in time, we were looking at kind of a skeleton crew of essentially Tim and the aquatics director, and that was it. But Tim, you can speak to that. Yeah.
So early projections that I had come up with were that, to bring our aquatics director on board, it would cost about $5,500 through the end of the 20 fiscal year. And that was just, considering that Matt and I would be down there to enforce social distancing and check the passes that we sold. The caveat that you run into is the problem you run into is that either all of us are, both of us are down there 7 days a week, or we still have time periods where we have to, hard close the beach, or have a police officer, there to enforce the social distancing that's going on. For every lifeguard that you add, and I had sent these projections out as part of the packet last week, it's $15 and change to be down there. Per hour. So depending on hours of operation and everything, things really start to vary drastically. What I was hoping to at least to get through on Monday. You know, if we did it, technically we don't have to do anything on Monday. We could just say that, you know, the beach is closed, or we could say, you know, social distancing must be enforced, no more than, you know, what we're allowed to have down there. But I just wanted to make sure that we were kind of thinking about this, because, you know, in the next short period of time, in the weeks period, we're going to have to decide that this is, you know, the expenses and this is the staff that we can run. And I can come up with, you know, any of those numbers, because one of my questions was, do we want to run the beach with lifeguards or without lifeguards? In my personal opinion, just, you know, as personal opinion, that if we charge for the beach this summer, it should be guarded. And that, you know, it's just a safety measure. If we decide not to have lifeguards, then we should close the beach and do as other communities are doing, and people can walk through, but, you know, that's the extent of it. Which I also think would be a huge disservice, because there's so many of the, you know, recreation offerings that everybody's used to that aren't going to be around this year. So that's why I was, you know, trying to come up with a plan that was not only safe, but equitable for everybody involved, to try to give as many people the opportunity to get there, swim safely, and then head out in order to do so.
Okay, thank you. I see that Chief Wadzinski's on the call. I didn't know if he had any comments that he wanted to offer to the conversation.
You know, as far as the beach goes, like Tim said, there's everybody's limited in so many things this year. It'd be a shame, you know, if they weren't able to use it to some extent. It just makes sense. But again, it all depends on everyone's level of common sense, and if everybody can, you know, do it in a controlled fashion.
Okay. Are there any other comments by any other members of the board?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Certainly.
Tim, I just see a tremendous headache for you to ever try to guard or limit the number of people that can be down there. And God bless you. I think it's a major underdoing. What happens if someone who doesn't drive a car but comes down and puts their pocketbook or a chair down there, and then they leave to go back home? How do you regulate something like that?
So under the plan that we put forth about a month ago, we would create these 15 socially distanced boxes on the beach. We would then sell those spots or memberships, or however we were going to do that, in 2-hour increments. They would get on MyRec, they would sign up for their spot, they would get their receipt, they would only be able to access the park through the parking lot. They would show their receipt to the attendant, who would then let them have a spot, and also telling them their corresponding lock number of the beach, at which point everybody would kind of do their thing for their hour and 45 minutes. We'd make an announcement, everybody would get up, pack up their cars, and then we'd have the second wave of people come through in order to, you know, facilitate that. And then any blocks essentially that aren't used, or any aren't booked in the reservation system the night before, we put up on Facebook and Instagram, and whoever kind of comments on that time spot would then get that spot. So that's your opportunity. If you want to get a second spot for the week, that would be how you might grab that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I mean, it seems to me we certainly need to meet and have a more in-depth discussion about plans for the beach. I'm not certain that this is something that we can resolve now prior to Memorial Day. I think logistically, there's just too many questions and variables in play. You know, that being said, I'm not in favor of closing the beach to anybody that wants to go down there and utilize it Memorial Day weekend, even though it's not, quote, officially open, as it would be in the normal course if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic. So I don't know if there's how the board feels about that. If you feel we need to just defer this to our next meeting, the next scheduled meeting when we were going to discuss this in the normal course, or what are your thoughts about the beach for Memorial Day weekend? It just seems like it's not something that we can resolve tonight.
I approach it. The first thing I do is look at it from a public safety standpoint and a financial, a business standpoint. But similar to with Chris trying to offer up, trying to be there for the residents and help through subsidy, from a morale standpoint or from the standpoint of giving people something to chew on. If there is a way that we can do this and do it in a reasonable fashion, I think it's worth exploring. To have Chris and Matt, the sole operators of the beach, is asking an awful lot of our staff and of our employees. And
Right.
Regardless of whether we make money, we don't make money, putting the whole business model, the business case aside, I just don't think it's fair to employees to be put under that, and then have the police, someone's down there but they didn't sign up for it, and then
Right.
you have to get the police involved. So I think it's a very tough conversation to have. I appreciate Alicia and Tim getting the guidance of their colleagues from around the Commonwealth. And Tim, to your point, with seeing California and Florida, and today in the news, the state of New Jersey opened up yesterday, and I mean it was shoulder to shoulder yesterday at the beach down in New Jersey. I forget which beach it was at, but it was just everything on the news this morning just had that scene. And then we get into the whole freedom conversation. So I unfortunately, I'm kind of all over. I can probably defend any one of the points. If there is a way that we can do it, we can do it reasonably, whether it's financially feasible or not. I would be interested in taking a look at it, but it sounds like right now we don't have the mechanism in place, or not the staff in place to be able to pull it off for this weekend.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's just a timing.
Cindy, I think you make a good point, though, that outright closing the beach, closing it in enforcing no access to the beach it's simply inviting people to disregard those orders and essentially just ceding all authority, because it's just going. There are going to be people over and over and over again who continue to show up down there and want to be able to utilize the beach. I think looking at this, the fact that we have to look at this from a profit loss standpoint suggests that there could be something flawed in the economic model of how we handle access to some of these public resources. But that's a bigger, longer discussion. It's one thing for Parks and Rec to ask residents to pay for programs that they put on. I think it's a different thing to ask residents to pay for access to a public resource like the beach, which is something that still requires some funding, but is at a different level. Nonetheless, that aside, I guess my preference would be either taking no action right now and allowing it to stay at the discretion of individual residents as they're down there, and simply observing how people handle it. Not optimistic that it would be handled well, but I would be interested to know how people do in fact handle it when it starts to get busier, and then be prepared to put a plan in place to manage the crowds. It's just, no offense, Tim, I know you've put a lot of thought into this. I don't like any of the options that you put forward. They're all, and it's nothing to do with your plans. It's just everything to do with that. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances. And I think you've probably put together good plans. So my take would be let it ride for right now if we can, and then plan to implement something as of our next meeting.
Okay. I agree with you on that, Chase. I mean, we've had some nice days. I know that people have been utilizing the beach. I think we just stay the course with what's been taking place up to this point, and then just move forward with our scheduled meeting to dive into this more deeply and come up with a plan for going forward. Are there any other comments from the board on this?
Yeah, Cindy, I'm going to throw something out. Just trying trying to think through this and try to find, a way to get it done. So we've got some employees that are being underutilized in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if there's any way that we can use employees differently, or if there's volunteers or senior work-off folks that we might be able to use to help out with Park and Rec, with Tim and Matt and whatever other staff down there to kind of do the policing. I'm not sure that senior tax work-off program is necessarily, if they're the most at-risk population, it might not be the right way to do it, but there might be some seniors that feel as though they'd be able to offer some help and keep a safe distance. So Nina, you might be better suited to answer the question as to whether or not folks from other departments might be able to have some of their hours that they're working remotely right now be used through, cross-function working from.
Yes, yeah, I mean, as you kind of answered the senior tax work-off piece, I think my understanding is most, if not all of them, have used their hours or worked their hours. So I don't think that there's much availability there. And not to answer a question with a question, but to Alicia and to Tim, would there be special training that would be needed?
Yes.
Yeah. So all of our backup personnel, even right down the snack shack people, are at least first responder trained. So if we had to respond to an emergency, they can assist in the emergency. The idea that was put forth, just to be clear, in the models that I had put out for you guys to discuss and think about for next week, had suggested having everybody who we do have on staff, which is myself, Matt, and up to 3 lifeguards a day, if I'm not one of the people who's there and I'm, taking my day off on the week, that we had enough people to facilitate a rescue if necessary. So that was where my thought was in that process. As far as other, skills that they need to have, to be at the beach, most of the other stuff that we need to use can be a little tricky sometimes, especially teaching that on the tablet. But that's,
He's kind of
the
frozen
fire
there.
safety piece. Sorry.
He
Sounded like Max Headroom.
I know the MyRec program that we use to do their point of sales, as well as any of the registration for programs. All of that has to go through the system that we use. So we're the only department here that does use MyRec. So that would take some special training as well.
Right. I mean,
the piece I was just going to finish on is the biggest worry this year, as the recreation departments in the aquatics industry as a whole, is because a lot of places are off limits. There's going to be a lot of people going to places they're unfamiliar with. There's going to be a lot of people who normally swim in pools that are now going to ponds and lakes. And the concern for the increased risk of drownings is a very great one this summer in particular, to the point that the American Red Cross actually put a learn to swim class for parents to teach their kids, since there's not going to be any swim lessons offered this year, because they really feel like that's going to be a huge threat for everybody. And, especially with Massachusetts already having as many drownings that they did last summer, they're looking for that to increase incrementally this year, which is another reason that we should really, keep our beaches guarded.
okay.
You're kind of talking me into closing it.
I don't think this is something that we can resolve tonight. I just think certainly something that we need to take up at our future meeting. But I agree with the points that Chase made. I mean, it's a public beach. I don't see that we can close it to the public, even though it's not the official. We're not going to have the official opening that we usually do with respect to the Park and Rec department. But I don't see that we can prohibit people from going there. But people do need to practice social distancing and the guidelines that have been put in place is my feeling on it. And we've taken up a lot of time. I don't think this is something that we can put together and formulate, given the last minute order from the governor. So it's my feeling that we just continue this discussion at the next scheduled meeting, which is what date, Nina? Are they
June 1st?
June 1st.
So I just want to clarify. So then for the interim till we meet on June 1st, then we are just going to, we will not have staff down there. We will just keep the beach as it is, and we'll put up additional signage. That's stuff that we've been meaning to do anyway. Essentially that's how we're going to operate. We'll allow people to make the decisions for themselves, and if the police are called, then they'll come down and, you know, disperse if they need to.
Right.
So what
I just,
signage is it that you're looking to say the beach is closed or swim at your own risk, or what kind of, basically at this point, I just want to limit liability to the town.
No, I totally understand you. So there is already a sign up there, a very large one that says no lifeguard on duty, swim at your own risk. That's up there year round. So the only time that kind of goes away is when we actually have lifeguards there. But we wanted to put up more signage talking about social distancing, what the requirements are, and all of those pieces. So that's more what we'll focus on.
Alicia, can you harmonize that sign with the new order? You know, Tim was talking about 12 feet spacing and things like that as sort of a primer to get people used to what those expectations are anyway.
Absolutely.
okay. All right, great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so item number.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Sure, go ahead, Chris.
Talking about the transfer station and opening it. I'd like to open it possibly tomorrow with a couple caveats. One, the swap shop would stay closed, and we would only accept credit cards. So our thought is we would set the credit card machine on the little table that's outside the building, the little security shack, whatever you want to call it there. And we've installed plexiglass on that window with a little kind of an opening to slide documents back and forth, but trying to keep it as contactless as possible. Just kind of I want to get the boards. I was thinking about doing it June 2nd, but based on the fact that this weekend's supposed to be real nice, I actually honestly forgot that it was Memorial Day. I think opening it now would be, I don't see any more risk doing it now than waiting until June 2nd. I guess it'd be see what the board had to think. I talked to Scott about this already too, and we're kind of in agreement on the steps we're taking over there. So just see what the board thinks.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
Chris, talking to Chris Upperman at the dump, he was saying that if you use a charge card, it actually takes longer to process it than it would be to use a written check or even cash. So he thought it would make
It may. I guess it comes down to, we're trying to limit the amount of contact. I don't know. I mean, a line to me is, better than not. I don't know. I guess that's a question maybe Scott can probably help answer.
Sure. There's been a lot of communities that have totally eliminated cash and checks. They're only using the swipe cards just to simply eliminate that hand-to-hand contact. There was some discussion on the DPH call this morning before the governor's announcement, and they went into some of the specific things related to that. We're still going to. It's not stay at home. It's safer at home. So as things expand, some of the things can open, like the transfer stations. Some of the spaces at town hall can open. If you have an individual office, that can open. If you have a shared space, if there's 4 people in a space, you're going to try to go to 25%. So one of them, maybe 2, depending on the space. But eliminating the potential of the hand-to-hand with the cash and checks, it might take a couple minutes longer, but it's for everybody's safety. And to do a debit card, a credit card, something like that, it just makes sense. This is all part of the new normal. And it's something that people are going to have to get used to.
It's something people are asking for too. So, I mean, I think people are asking for that to be open. And if we,
Absolutely. And one of the other aspects of that, talking to Chris and Phyllis at the transfer station, with that little bit of plexiglass across the window on the trailer, or their office. It's just one of those additional things that could, just help them out, really to limit the exposure that they have. And if you have a card reader down on the table, down on the ground, that just keeps everybody that much further away from them. It's a good safe practice, going forward. This isn't a temporary thing. It'll probably be like that, going right through the winter.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? No. So I mean, I think that's fine, Chris, if that's what you want to do and open it up.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Are there any other staff updates?
I'd like to just touch base on the rest of town hall, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
No, not at all.
On the was it a week ago Tuesday, the building inspector, myself, Jim Garaffi, we went through all of town hall, evaluated all the spaces, everything where there's the potential of having public interaction with town employees. We came up with a list of all of those spaces where there's interaction, and are recommending that we order like a plexiglass windows for those spaces. In addition to town meeting, you'd need those for the interaction where you're going to be checking in. Diane Corey is going to need, I think, about a dozen of those. If we want to do that, we need to order those as quickly as possible if we actually want to get them in June, and hopefully, be able to get those before town meeting, those ones specifically. They're basically just small pieces of plexiglass that have plexiglass legs, simple for storage. They come apart easily. They're desktop mounts, have a small cutout on the bottom so that people could pass things through, but it really limits the face-to-face interaction. Anybody that comes into town hall would still be required to wear a mask. We've also spread out masks throughout town hall to all departments, and hopefully we'll be able to expand on that going forward with some additional protection, in addition to increasing hand sanitizer stations throughout the building. But I think the biggest priority right now would be ordering up those the plexiglass face shields, or separators for countertops as quickly as we could.
Okay.
yeah, so we can get people back to work, the customer facing people back into their
Absolutely.
normal
Yep.
environment.
And in the conference call today, they specifically brought up town halls.
Good.
So the discussion went forward with talking about spaces, where if you have your own office, there would be no reason why you couldn't go back to work. But the biggest thing were those spaces where they're shared. If it's maybe if it's a 20, I spoke to Jim Garaffi this afternoon about this as well. And, if you're looking at a larger shared space, say Diane Crowry's space, for example, potentially 2 of them could be in there at a time, but not all 4 of them. That maybe they would have to share the space during the week. They are still recommending that if you are working from home and it's productive, then continue to do so.
Yeah.
But where you have the space to have your individual office, then there's no reason why that couldn't you couldn't resume operation. But then figure out some type of a plan where people would share the spaces, days on, days off. But again, limiting seniors, there's still a high risk population. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, town hall open up and invite them all back into the building right away. take maybe a scaled back approach at some of that. Possibly having employees come back at first, and then maybe a week or two later, limit the interactions with the public. But I mean, obviously, that's up to you guys.
Okay.
And Chief, if I may, Madam Chair, just quick
Sure.
question. Based on what you described, and I appreciate you keeping your ear to the ground on this subject, especially while we're planning for town meeting, trying to get things going. Is it your understanding that the 25% does not apply? I mean, how does the 25% apply to town hall? Is it only in larger offices like you described? Anyone who has individual offices, technically that 25% rule doesn't apply? Using, let's say, our office up here with myself, Joe, and Diane, what is, just using that so I can get a framework of what that means in your view?
In speaking with Jim and listening to some of the debate on the question and answer portions for what they call in DPH this morning, anybody that has an individual office would be able to go back to work.
Okay.
Again, use caution with your seniors as they're, a high risk population.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the shared spaces was what they were, really discussing. And if it's a large open space and there were 4 people, obviously it depends on the size of the space. If it's a large space, you could have, maybe 2, maybe 3. Again, and we talked about like the assessor's office. There's only 2 people in that large, in the main space. But if you had the divider, a sizable divider in between the desks, that would be can be considered enough, in at least in our interpretation, in addition to Jim, to allow for a safe working space.
Okay. So it's really going to be a space by space analysis on when, having either people, I mean, it's, again, to your point, it's going to be one thing when we have the employees come back, and then it's a whole nother element when we were to open for the public. So we kind of have to look at those 2 as phases and perhaps discuss further.
That's correct. I wouldn't necessarily rush into opening it up to the public right away. Get the employees back in and get them to a level of comfort where they would be open to having the public come back in. And then when the public does come back in, it's going to be limited. I would imagine it would be limited interactions at first. And there's right now it's working. People are leaving their checks or out in the mailbox at the main entrance. And online transactions, things of that nature. If that continues to work, there's really no need to stop doing that. But I know there is some business that needs to actually take place, and if we can do it safely and put those safeguards in place, like the plexiglass and stuff, there's no reason why we couldn't start to move forward.
Right. And I'll assuming the board would like the information, I'll collect information from other municipalities to see what they're doing, and also collect information to see if there is going to be specific guidance that was discussed earlier in our meeting.
Okay.
If I could piggyback on that, Madam Chair.
Sure.
If you're going to be reaching out to the other municipalities, Nina, if they are going to be purchasing these plexiglass dividers for check-in and things like that for their town meetings, let's collaborate with them, and maybe we can cut our costs in half by splitting the costs with one of our surrounding communities and using whatever plexiglass town meeting dividers they use. If they meet a week before us, or there may be some
Talking about sharing them?
economies that we can find here from, if every community goes out there and buys 12 of these things on July 1st, there's going to be a whole bunch of these 12s available real cheap.
One thing I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind, it's really not a significant purchase for all of the workstations in addition to those pieces for town meeting. And, again, this isn't going to be a one-time use. I would imagine that these would be used now, the fall, next spring. It might be money well spent.
Right. It's going to be around for a while. So,
Is it?
thank you, though. Thank you, Mr. DeCoste. So I just wanted to put out there in the, we're not going to be taking any public input during this section, this time of the meeting. We're going to defer that to agenda item number 4, just to take into consideration the time of the staff that are waiting on the call with respect to the additional agenda items under this section. So the next agenda item is a continued discussion on town meeting logistics relating to COVID-19.
I know
So I
we
see-
have our town clerk on the line. I saw our moderator. Oh, there he is. And we may have other staff who are here to discuss that matter as well. I know that there might be some board and committee members who are interested, but I thought, Madam Chair, we might start with our moderator and our town clerk first and
Absolutely.
then go from there.
Sure. Diane, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I don't know if you want me to start or Tim.
Tim just unmuted. It doesn't matter to me, either one.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, if you don't mind. Thank you for having me, and congratulations, Madam Chair,
Thank
on
you.
your election tonight. I think the last time we spoke, we were going to perform some sort of calculation on the inside of the gymnasium. And when I say we, I mean someone was going to do that. I didn't mean to suggest I'd be doing it. And I didn't hear what the result of that may have been, but I did have the opportunity to attend the meeting, the Board of Health. And I think that, well, the town administrator was there and others were on the call. And I think it's safe to say that the Board of Health had serious reservations about an indoor town meeting in June with 200 or 300 people in a gymnasium. In fact, the word crazy was used as far as that, and it gave me some pause as well. That certainly was my first option, but I thought about it. We know that being outdoors is generally thought to be safer in terms of the spread of the virus than being in an indoor and enclosed space. So, with that being said, I'm certainly open to a suggestion. I will say the Board of Health, not only did they not like the idea of being indoors, they preferred an outdoor meeting. They also would like, their suggestion was to do it later in the year. So, they had a couple of objections to doing an indoor meeting in June. So just, and I think, when the Board of Health thinks something's a bad idea, you have to take it seriously. I mean, that's their function. So the way I look at it, the when and the where of town meeting and the what, as in what's on the warrant, that's all the Board of Selectmen's call. Once the board decides the when and the where, then how the meeting is conducted, the logistics of that's the town moderator's call, frankly. Okay. So, I'm open to suggestion. The board has strong feelings one way or another as far as location, timing, date. I'm all ears as far as that goes. I mean, there are different challenges with whatever the decision ultimately is made, but I'm willing to work with whatever the board sets as the parameters.
Okay. Thank you. Diane, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for having me. Nancy Glencross and myself did go down to the school and we did measure it. And we did a very moderate consideration of what we could actually fit for people in both the gym and the cafeteria. And based on the considerations we did, about 150 could fit into the gymnasium and about 70 could fit into the cafeteria. So we figured about 220. So that's very low considering what we've had in the past for resident voters coming to the town meeting. So in looking at the last few years, what we've had for voters, we've had, in 2019, we had 682. 2018, we had 231. In 2017 and 16, we had over 600. But if we looked at all those years where we had over 600, they were very controversial items that were on the warrant. The 231 in May in 2018, 2015 and 14, we had 143 and 250. So the average on those 3 years combined, about 208 people showed up to town meeting. So I want to say one thing. First and foremost, out there, there was concern that I said that it was a hassle for me to be having town meeting out in any other location except for in the gym and in the cafeteria. Never in the whole time that I spoke with you the last time did I ever say that. So I just want to put that out there. But based on the discussion that Mark Rory and myself had regarding the best protection for our residents and voters of this town to make them feel safe and to possibly attend town meeting, an alternative was discussed, and other than having it in the Charles Forbes K Gymnasium. And so we know that everybody is very concerned about having it inside. So we discussed having it out on the alumni field. And we looked to see how to utilize the space and make it work. So as we all know, being outside, there are also some challenges, and the principal challenge is that of the weather, because we all know weather in New England is unpredictable, and rain is, one of the biggest things we can never predict. The other item that we have to consider being outside on the turf is if it's a warm day, heat coming up off of the turf. So those are the two things that we can't predict, the heat or the rain. So I know that you all have in your packet, hopefully you have in your packet, the layout of what we did for the alumni field. Did you get it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So in talking with the school, there's 300 chairs total that were specially purchased by the school. So if you look at it, we can have 250 main chairs on the field, 50 up front for the hearing impaired. So if you look at it, it's all laid out. So 50 up front. We'll only use one screen. So inside we usually have two big screens, a small screen that we do the presentations for, which we will not be using any screens for that. We'll just have the one screen for the hearing impaired only. So that's one of the biggest changes that we'll be seeing if we go outside. That's if you look up front, you'll see that blue mark up in the front. That's where the screen will be. For all of us, where the bleachers are, you'll be seeing the moderator, the town clerk, the board of selectmen, FinCom, town administrator, assistant town administrator, and anyone else, which would be Cheryl, the town council, and anybody else will all be up in the bleachers. So the bleachers will just strictly there'll be no residents up there. So we've taken the bleachers all out of consideration. We'll have 3 microphones up in the stands, and then we'll use 2 or 3 mics down in the field, and we'll use the PA system that they normally use for football games, so that it'll project out onto the field for the residents to be able to hear. And then we will use the audio recording cassettes, and it will not be going live. So that's one other thing that we normally would be taping it live to be able to be seen. That's one thing that will be a drawback. So our check-ins, we will have check-ins that are staggered, 5 or 6 tables along the walkway that you would normally come into the football games, along that walkway. So there'll be 5 or 6 tables, single check-ins. Everybody will have an entire listing of people. The Board of Health suggested, in talking with them, we take temps. So as you first come in, you'd have your temperature taken. And then you would be able to come forward, check in, and just go in and sit down. You would receive 2 colored papers. One would say yes on it, and one would say no on it. And so in case Tim can't hear and differentiate from a yes vote or a no vote, they'd be holding up that yes vote colored paper or the no vote colored paper, depending on which way they're voting. The other option that was looked at is handheld equipment. So in looking at it, as we talked last time, Nancy looked into another company, and that other company was available at $5,500 for 500 pieces. If we have to go to a rain date, it's an additional $2,500. So you're talking about $8,000 if we had a rain date. And that does not cover hotel expenses, but it does cover their flight to come here. And that covers 2 people to come to help us out. We also discussed handicap and senior parking would be the entire front row along the fence area to give more seniors and handicap parking, because that's what we normally do for our town meeting. We try to accommodate our seniors and handicap as much as possible to help them out a little bit more. There'll be no presentations or handouts. So what we had been talking about would be Zoom invites. So you would be able to bring in with you only your cell phones. That way you could log into a Zoom invite and be able to see all of the presentations. What else? Any supplements or additions would be handed out at the check-ins. Anybody who has a presentation would have to get it to the IT 1 week ahead of time. And any other do's or don'ts would, get into further detail at a later time. But one of the suggestions for a date would be, at this time, we originally were thinking about the June 27th with a rain date of the 28th. However, our moderator possibly isn't available. And the other reason we are not considering that date is we'd like to have the continuity of all boards, and where we're having the election on the 20th, we'd like to consider June 13th with a rain date of June 14th. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Diane.
Sunday may pose an issue for some people.
Well, that would be the rain date. Well, hopefully it will be a non-issue. I mean, what?
So, sorry, if I may. So we were thinking the suggestion would be June 13th at 8 o'clock. The 19th, where church is coming back in, we would consider going later, like at 11 o'clock in the morning versus an 8 o'clock in the morning, where church is coming back.
Okay.
What does the June 13th or 14th timeline mean with respect to the warrant?
We did, Diane mentioned this idea today, so we ended up contacting our printer. It doesn't change our deadline for tomorrow at noon. It would maintain the same deadline, but there would be an added cost. We were seeking the added cost, but haven't received it yet. So I would say, I'm guessing it's not going to be, prohibitive, for instance.
Sure, but it's simply additional printing cost to expedite it. We're not running into legal hurdles by doing the 13th.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
This is going to cost us a little more. I don't think there's any two ways about that. So,
Okay.
I just want to make sure it was legally viable.
Right.
We can make it happen. Yep.
Right.
And frankly, if we needed more chairs, the chairs that are laid out that Diane presented on the slide that she had up there, those are the chairs that the school owns. And the reason they bought those is because they have the scooped base. You don't have four legs going into the turf. It's a rounded U bottom on either side of the chairs. So we can certainly, if needed, rent an additional 100, 200, 300 chairs. Again, additional expense, but rather have enough chairs for everybody than come up short. And that's, I'm certain that Bill Maher or someone from the schools could, or Steve Mark could let us know what chairs we need to order if we did need to order additional chairs.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board for Diane or?
I do have one, Cindy, if you
Sure.
don't mind, Madam Chair.
No, no.
Who's going to be responsible for calling the state mosquito control folks and coordinating that?
Through you to the previous speaker. We actually just received the mosquito control, and they're actually due to come out on the 9th of June.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, good. So at this time, we're looking at holding town meeting June 13th on Alumni Field with a rain date of June 14th, Nina, and then in a backup date of June 19th, correct? Did I
I
hear
missed the 19th part, but I'm confirming the 14th. I don't
Okay,
know.
I thought I heard the
what schedule.
19th in there. Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that if we find ourselves in a situation where the 13th and the 14th don't pan out, then we might be looking at a 27th and 28th, but we could utilize those opportunities. And I would defer to the moderator. Mr. Moderator, I understand we'd probably have to, let's just go through this programmatically for a second. Since we're going to set the town meeting date on the 13th, if there is somehow a weather event that prevents us from holding town meeting, you, Mr. Moderator, if I understand correctly, would need to go to town meeting, open town meeting, and postpone it to the 14th. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I would have to, actually, the town clerk and I are the
Okay,
only
yep.
two that are required to be there for that.
Perfect. So then if for some reason that repeated itself on the 14th, then we could, in anticipation of the 13th, knowing the weather for the 14th, be preparing to discuss alternative options such as the 27th or the 28th, perhaps, if absolutely necessary. So maybe at this time, we only need one rain date.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could I ask one other thing?
Sure.
Just for the members of the public, we're taking for granted the importance of doing this in June because I think we've collectively as a group gotten our head around the importance of doing that. But I know a couple of times I've heard you lay out the importance of doing it in June rather than deferring it further down the road to September or something like that. Would you mind to articulate that again for members of the public? Why June instead of waiting another 2 or 3 months?
Certainly. And actually, I think I'm going to defer that question to Cheryl if she's still on the phone. She's still on the call? If not, I know that Nina, oh, there she is.
Oh.
Cheryl explained this very well at the FinCom meeting last week. I'm going to put her on the spot.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the reasoning why you would consider not deferring is that if we don't have a town meeting before June 30th, then we're in what's considered a monthly budget process scenario with which we have to create monthly budgets for every department, approved by every committee, approved by the Board of Selectmen, submitted to the state. And those budgets are based off of our FY20 appropriation, which means that we would not have any funding available for any capital items. Specifically, the ones that would be problematic would be the police station repairs. They wouldn't be able to occur until we had a town meeting. We have some capital items that are for major equipment repairs. So if anything major happened in the town, we would have no funding mechanism except for the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. The Finance Committee Reserve Fund in FY20 only had $150,000, and so therefore our funding ability would be limited. We wouldn't have access to free cash or stabilization funds. And there is also the potential to push back the tax rate setting process, which for residents would mean that if we had to do that, then their actual fourth quarter bills would be quite large. And then there's just a number of costs as well too that are associated with having to do a monthly budget.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I think it's important for the public to understand that we're having, not having town meeting just to have town meeting. There's a reason that we need to have it within a certain time frame. Otherwise, there's certainly financial consequences that will be imposed upon the town that we're trying to avoid. That is why we're working diligently to make this happen as soon as possible in the normal course that we can during this pandemic. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may, just
Sure.
just trying to think of the logistics of outside, inside, and whatnot, and I'm just trying to think of. I can understand us not being able to use the Russell Street School building, the high school building, as well as the middle school building, because logistically that'd be a nightmare for Diane. But if we had everybody in the building, we have 25 classrooms, or what is it, in the middle school, where we could have, if all of the registered DeCoste showed up at town meeting, we could be in a classroom. There could be 6 registered DeCoste in one classroom that could be socially distant from everybody else. They'd all come in and check in, and they'd be kind of quarantined off to their own classroom. Is that something that we logistically, from an LCTV standpoint, that would we be able to do a closed circuit plug-in or some sort of audio? Is doing it indoors that much? I mean, everybody, anytime you go to Market Basket, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, I mean, people are, I don't know. I think that whether we do it inside or outside, the same people are going to show up. I don't think it's going to make a difference whether it's inside or outside. Personally, that's my opinion, just based upon watching how people are operating during this pandemic. If they want to go out to buy something at Walmart, they're going out and doing it. But I just think that I don't know if having it exclusively inside the building at the middle school is feasible. I do appreciate the effort that's gone into laying it out on Alumni Field, and if in fact we do it on Alumni Field, I think it's a great use of the space, and it'll certainly go down in history. But I just wanted to throw that out there so that we're looking at all options.
Right. Well, and I mean, personally, I believe that, we charged Diane and, put a team together to look at all options. And this is the best option that they feel they've arrived at and come back to us with. I'm certain that they looked at the interior of that building and just to see if it could work that way.
Okay.
So Diane, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I respect that.
To Chuck's comment.
So Madam Chair, we could, logistically, if we looked at like the high school and you looked at using, the gym, the cafeteria, and the Kiva room, and the auditorium. You could, I'm not sure, I would think that you could, possibly, I'm not sure, Mark, what LCTV could do as far as picking up all the different rooms together to get them, in sync together.
Yeah.
That's not my purview. That's not my expertise. But that you could get more people into those rooms. That would give us more, obviously.
Yeah.
But the Board of Health, as Tim stated, the Board of Health's concern is having everybody inside at the same time and breathing the same air. And the residents that we've heard speaking, and nobody said anything to me directly that that's their concern of being inside. Now, we see everybody going to the stores, purchasing their food, people going to, like you say, Lowe's and Home Depot and all these other places and shopping. Is it different when they're going to be sitting for 3 or 4 hours and, taking votes at a town meeting? Absolutely. So we're trying to decide what we believe is going to be best for the residents of this town and try to make the best decision for everybody. So Board of Health said the best thing is to be outside, so that was the next decision we went, was going outside and trying to figure out, how to make it work outside. So we didn't look at, how could we logistically do it at the high school, LCTV. I mean, do you want us to go and look at that next? We can, but now we have
No, I appreciate the effort and the time that you guys have put into it, and I appreciate your respect and the opinion of the Board of Health. But to your point, I have had no residents say to me, "I will not go to town meeting if it's indoors." Mostly people have said, "Let's just have town meeting and get it over with." Frankly, not get it over with, but let's just have it. I mean, and everybody brings up, during great weather, you can't even get near a Lowe's or a garden center, or it's. I think it's a little hypocritical, and I think that the numbers that you gave at the very beginning of this portion of the call, relative to the average number, without a large capital purchase or alumni field vote or the sewer vote, something that is quote unquote controversial or divisive. We don't have that in this town meeting, and frankly, I think that would be able to execute an indoor town meeting and take the weather out of the equation. But I do respect the fact that you guys have listened to our Board of Health. That's what they're elected to do, and if that's what the guidance they're giving, I just think that there might have been some other opportunities.
Okay.
I just feel like there are a few people that are very loudly saying that we can't have it outside, and I do respect the fact that it's the Board of Health telling you that, and it's not just listening to a few people on social media that are saying that we're irresponsible or what have you.
Okay. Thank you. So I think, thank you very much for the work that's been put into arriving at this conclusion. Especially, I value the input of the Board of Health and the recommendation that they've made to hold town meeting outside. I didn't know if Mr. Knox or Mr. Glavy had any comments that they wanted to share at this time. We do have a motion for this matter as well.
We probably should have made alumni stadium a dome stadium.
Don't get me going.
Mr. Glavy, did you have any comments or questions?
But I was only able to catch so much of the discussion because I was representing our board at the Groton Board of Health meeting, but I don't have anything to contribute other than I'm ready to support what's on the table.
Okay. So we do have a motion.
Then I'll move that the board vote to change the date of the annual town meeting from Monday, June 15th to Saturday, June 13th, beginning at 8 a.m. with a rain date of Sunday, June 14th at 8 a.m. to be held at Alumni Field.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. I just wanted to make one comment on the Sunday date of the 14th. Were we going to change the time to work?
That's why I hesitated there. Should it be 8 a.m. or 11 a.m.?
I think it was 11 a.m., right?
Well, what we had said was if in-person church services have started up at that point, which I don't think we know.
That came out today, as long as it's no more than 40% capacity.
Okay.
That was part of the governor's.
Okay, so that should be 11 a.m. then?
I mean, some people go to mass at 11, some people go to services at noon. I mean, what is the right time on a Sunday? different people don't do anything on a Sunday because they consider it the Sabbath. So I don't know how you win that one.
Say 11.
Say
And
11.
I'll amend my motion to reflect June 14th at 11 a.m.
Okay, perfect. So motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's and I.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
Mr. Glady,
Aye.
and Cindy is aye. So the motion is approved as amended, and town meeting is set for June 13th at Alumni Field.
Hope it doesn't
Thank you
rain.
very much for everybody that put the time and effort into moving this forward. I appreciate it.
And for those who are going to be going to services on Sunday, pray for no rain on Saturday.
Right. So we did, the next agenda item was considerations for reopening town offices. I know we touched on that a little bit when Chief Wadzinski was on the call. Nina, do you want to, was there anything to add to that? Or
at this point? No, I think we can move along.
okay.
I mean, I think we do need to explore it further, and I think we need to come back and have further conversations. In the meantime, we're gonna get the order completed that the board gave Chief Wazinski the go-ahead on.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we are on to agenda item number 4, public input and members updates. We'll start with members updates. Mr. DeCoste?
In the interest of time, I'm all set. I'll save mine for next time.
Okay. Mr. Knox?
The same. I'm all set.
Mr. Glady?
I'm all set.
Mr. Gerbig?
The only thing I need, and I think we can make it quick, is a vote from the board supporting the use of Lot 10 on the Brown land, or what's known as Lot 10 on the Brown land from the October 2017 plan for use as affordable housing. So I can give you a motion for that if you're ready, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
Then I would move that the Board of Selectmen vote to express their intent to utilize Lot 10 on the Brown land if the town were to acquire that land for affordable housing purposes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
Chuck's aye.
Mr. Glady?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain from that vote. So the motion passes 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chase, for working on that.
And Paul.
And Paul, sorry.
Wow, no love.
I'm just a pretty face, really.
The voice of the Brown property.
Oh, boy. So the only update I have is that the Littleton, the Affordable Housing Trust launched an emergency rental assistance program. It's a 3-month program with different guidelines than the normal emergency, than the normal affordable rental program that we've put forward. This was something that was put together by the Mass Housing Partnership in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a relaxed application process, and it's a 3-month assistance program. So that is now up and running. And if anybody has, you can visit the town's website. Under the Department of Elder and Human Services, there's an online application and specific guidelines for that program that you can research then. But we're excited that we were able to utilize the Affordable Housing Trust in another, offering another means to help people in our community during the pandemic. So then now we were on to public input. Do we have anyone, Joe?
Yes, I'll let in to talk Christine Nordhaus first, and then we have 2 others after Christine.
Okay, sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Christine Nordhaus, 43 Star Hill. Sorry, my brain is shut down. I've had my hand up for over an hour. I wanted to comment and make a request of the board during the beach conversation when the Park and Rec staff were still on the meeting, that can we please limit access to the beach to Littleton residents only this year? I have a state park, Massachusetts, state park pass that I get every year, and Walden has one entrance. There's no reservation system. I'd be really miffed as a town resident if I lived in Littleton and had my beach pass and couldn't get a reservation, and I wouldn't want to make a reservation to go to the beach. So I just wanted to make those comments. And so that was that. So I'd ask that we hold off on any kind of reservation system until when and if it becomes apparent that it's absolutely necessary. And then the second comment I had was about town meeting and saving money. And before we rent any chairs, I was, when I worked at the Congregational Church, there were like a couple of hundred folding chairs there with those same rounded legs on the bottom that didn't poke holes in things. So you should maybe check with the churches and borrow some chairs before you add any more expense to the outdoor town meeting. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Christine, just to let you know, I believe that the last conversation we had with the Park and Rec, it was going to be limited to Littleton residents only.
Terrific.
Okay. And with respect to renting of chairs, I don't know that there is a need for that at this time. But thank you for offering those other resources where chairs may be available if needed.
Sure. Also, Chuck, if I may, through the chair, I have not set foot in a store since the first week in March. So no matter how crowded Lowe's is, I'm not there. And many people wouldn't.
You're the one.
Yeah, many people wouldn't be able to attend town meeting if it were indoors. I applaud the board for making the right decision on that. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone else, Joe?
Yes. We have JR of Pamela Way.
Hi, it's Judy Reed, Pamela Way. One question about town meeting outside. With the start time of 8, what time do people have to start showing up to check in? So I was hoping that you would answer my hand before you took the vote, and I would have recommended starting at 9 just so that people could show up at 8 to check in, and then gavel start at 9. But you already took the vote, so you might want to think about that, of how you're going to publicize what time people should show up to get in a socially distant way of getting into this, to the alumni field. And then my other thing was Governor Baker said that libraries could open up on 525 for curbside pickup and delivery. I couldn't remember if Board of Selectmen had care and custody because it's in town hall, or if that was just something the library trustees could decide.
Okay, thank you. Nina, can you respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of a gray area in terms of the library. I think, in any kind of scenario, what I understand is that they can actually, there is a way to shut off the elevator on one side. I just don't know if there's a way to protect, so to speak. I believe there is no, let me state this differently. The library, since they would not be in operation, those entering town hall, should we even be in a situation by May 25th where we would be opening to the public, which doesn't seem likely considering the needs to order the infrastructure, there is a way that if they are curbside at that time, that they can secure their area and not allow the elevator to open on that side. So I think that while it could be a joint conversation, I think in the end, The board of Selectmen, I can't think of anything in specific that would, the board would need to be involved in, but certainly could be a mutual conversation between the trustees or a member of the Board of Selectmen and the trustees so that everyone's on the same page as to where there could be areas that haven't been considered.
Okay. So maybe Nina, you could circle back on that and
Sure.
revisit that. Thank you.
Okay, and next we have Gabrielle.
Say your last name, Joe.
Hello.
Hi, Gabrielle.
Hi. So, oh, I thought I was on, I'm not on camera. Okay, that's fine. So, I am the chair of the Littleton Cultural Council, and is Heidi Montanari somewhere on the call? I can't see. If she's not, I'll help fill in.
I don't see her.
No.
Okay, so there are two announcements that I would like to make in terms of the way that the Littleton Cultural Council is trying to support artists and the community through the COVID-19 pandemic. The first is that we took a vote to use and utilize our council-initiated event funding for this fiscal year to support a Littleton Rocks kindness garden, which the thrust of this particular project, again, Heidi's been the point person on that, but the thrust of it is there are painted rocks that have been put around Conservation Trust trails and things. And there's been some discussion as to how to do that environmentally soundly and how, we don't want to just leave them there in perpetuity. So the creation of a small public space in Littleton where these rocks can then be in September, there's like a large scavenger hunt along the conservation lands to gather all of them up. And then they are displayed for the entire town in this small little space. So we are devoting our cultural council funds in order to help fund that project. We are going to be communicating and obviously working with the Conservation Trust, the Garden Club, the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So we're starting to put out feelers on who to talk to. Heidi is, again, she's been the one who brought it to the Cultural Council, and we were enthusiastically supportive of that. The second piece that I would like to inform the selectmen on is that we also agreed and voted to adopt the Massachusetts Cultural Council guidelines for offering support using our current funds that we have already granted out as a relief fund for COVID for our artists. There are many artists who have had their events postponed or canceled indefinitely. Some of them had already invested hundreds or thousands of dollars into events that didn't happen. And so the Massachusetts Cultural Council had offered us the opportunity to grant artists the leeway to, if they indicate that they have lost income equal to the grant, equal to or greater than the amount of the grant, that we could simply give them the grant money. What we found is that a number of artists simply want to just postpone, and they would be happier. They want to do the art. I mean, artists do art. Without doing art, we're not artists. So the idea is that we want to have that the artists who want to postpone and are able to postpone will do so. Our second, obviously there'd be reimbursement of money spent, and then possibly mitigation of the events, like a modification. So maybe instead of doing a poetry reading, for an example, instead of doing a poetry reading live, they do it live streamed. But we haven't had very many people taking us up on that. So just letting you guys know that that's how we are trying to support our artists within Littleton directly. is through money that has already been appropriated to do so. It's just loosening up the reimbursement guidelines per the state's recommendations.
Great. That's excellent, Gabrielle. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for the update on the Littleton Rocks and the Littleton Rock Garden. I know that the library trustees, Sam and Mark Rombacher, were interested in maybe speaking with the Cultural Council as well.
Yay!
Is the new library is maybe a potential location for the rock garden. So if you feel free to follow up with them, if you want to pass that on to Heidi in the group, that would be wonderful.
Happily, that was definitely on our radar as well. So it was just, we didn't want to presume and suddenly crash the library planning process. Hey, can we put some pretty rocks somewhere? Yeah. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
On an interim basis, Madam Chair, maybe 12 Robinson Road, we keep talking about the possibility of doing something cultural at 12 Robinson Road. It might be, an entry to that, at least as a holding place until the library is done, and there could be some kind of a ceremony or something to move the rocks.
That would be an amazing thing. Like we have wanted and have been trying to figure out ways to think about using 12 Robinson Road as a cultural center. But, obviously with COVID-19, everything is like completely on hold. So, but yes, I will bring that up with the board as well as a potential. Thank you so much.
Great idea.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, we have two more.
Sure.
Daryl Baker.
Great. Hi, Daryl.
Hi, Daryl Baker, Gristmill Road. Hey, I'm a frequent attender at most of these meetings, and I hadn't publicly spoke up. I have a reluctance on doing a 4 or 5 hour indoor meeting. It's not just people on social media. I'm not actually a social media person, so I wanted to I'm glad the board voted the way they did to hold it outside, because I think that will take the concerns about breathing recycled air for 4 hours in a facility there's still no known containment if somebody that is infected does attend town meeting. So thank you for taking the vote to do it outdoors.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and then last one is Mark Rembacher.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark Rambacher. Since the library's come up twice, I thought I'd mention the library trustees are meeting Wednesday at 6 p.m. to discuss a curbside reopening plan. We've started drafting, a 4-stage reopening plan for the library. And once we get farther along the process, we'll talk to the Cultural Council about hosting the rock garden. We haven't even broken ground yet, so it's a little early to figure out exactly how to do a rock garden, but we'd love to participate.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for taking one thing off my to-do list, Mark.
And Nina, if there's anything we need to know from your side before we meet about opening, let Samurai know, and we can discuss it tomorrow or Wednesday.
Sure. I will say that tomorrow's probably out. We're preparing the warrant, but once I can get my head screwed back on, we'll start looking at it on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And I also, Madam Chair, did message the town clerk with regard to the question that came up relative to what time residents should start showing up, and the town clerk indicated 7 a.m. for town meeting.
All right, great. Thank you. Joe, is there anyone else for public input?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, great. So we are on to agenda item number 5. We have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Director of Budget and Finance to further discuss the annual town meeting warrant and report.
Okay, just give me a minute as I'm bringing Finance Committee in.
Just maybe a brief thank you for all of them hanging in there. I think they were on the agenda at 7:05.
Behind.
Is it Gnome on FinCom? Oh, that's Gary. Sorry, man. He's still muted.
You're lucky.
Okay, do we know if everybody's on, Joe?
It doesn't look like Alan's joined us.
Alan Bell?
Yeah.
Okay,
Got the important Alan here.
right. Okay, so I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to start this off, if we want Cheryl to start it off, or how do you want to move forward for the discussion?
Gary, that's you.
Gary.
Just wanted to, well, thank you. Really, we actually met last week, and we voted all the financial articles except for two. Article 8, which deals with the library design fund. We had some questions, but they were answered over the last several days by Steve Venuti. And then Article 13, which relates to the Park and Rec, and we collectively decided to vote on that one, probably on town meeting floor, when we have exact numbers on what that looks like. So what I would ask tonight is, if you're going to be voting all the articles, if we could either vote articles that have changed between our meeting last Tuesday. I think that's why Nina wanted us here today, to just in case something changed since we voted on any of the articles, the financial articles. And if we could perhaps just get us Article 8, and then I can dismiss these guys that have been on here for 2 hours.
Right, sorry about that. Thank you for waiting.
We've been on for 4, Gary.
You could pay the big bucks.
Next year.
Nina, has there been any changes?
Cut Cindy some slacks. It's her first meeting as chair.
Yeah. Okay.
We have a talkative member.
So I'm gonna look to Cheryl too to fact check me here, but overall, we've had wording changes and clarifications made to articles, but nothing that has materially changed either the intent, the amount, or otherwise what was discussed at the last meeting. So I mean, it's certainly if the boards want to revote them and go through them, we can do that. They have been reviewed by town council a couple of times and by Cheryl, myself, and Steve. But I don't think that there's anything that changes the intent or the bottom line amounts that from the last meeting, which we discussed.
Okay.
As it relates to financial, let's keep it to financial articles.
Okay. So are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, I guess if we could have, I don't know, Cheryl, if you have the packet in front of you, Article 8, or somebody could bring up Article 8 so that the FinCom can actually vote on that article.
Do that.
Then we'll be pretty much ready to go. I understand that we're going to be meeting with you, or you've been requested to meet with us on June 1st. Is that correct? In another joint meeting? Is that right, Nina?
Yes, well, let me.
That's for the beach.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Oh, the Park and Rec discussion.
Okay.
Are you guys seeing the warrant here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, here's Article 8.
Okay.
So could I have a member of FinCom please make a motion for Article 8? If we don't have any questions or discussion, nor do we have any more questions or discussion. All right. Can we get a motion?
Thanks for making it bigger, Nina.
You're looking for a motion from FinCom, Gary?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I move that we recommend Article 8 as written. This is Betsy.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, both of you. I do have a question, and I think I brought this up on the last meeting. So, as I understand, there's about $700 and something thousand for design, and there's about half of it left over that's going to go into the cost of the building. did the building cost go up that much, or are we looking at just adding additional features and benefits, I guess, to the building because they have the extra money to do so? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Yeah, I believe it's the second part of that, which is correct, that there were certain things in the building that obviously some cuts were made, and this now can be used to perhaps add things that were originally wanted, or, you know, fix some of the things that they had to leave out. I believe that was my understanding. I don't believe that, obviously the article was voted on, so the cost of the library cannot go up unless we voted on it again. So
What was approved, right?
Right, it was already approved. So this is actually going to go into some of those things I think that were probably originally left off, and we have that money now to use appropriately to, you know, whatever, add certain things aesthetically or make things a little bit better, buy a better product on certain parts of it. If someone has something else on that, please go ahead and chime in, but I believe that's how that is going to be used.
So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I mean,
I do see Mark. Sorry,
I was just going to say, is Mark Rambacher still on the line?
Yeah, and he's got his hand raised.
Oh, great.
All right, great. So yeah, let's let Mark in.
Now he's either going to call me a liar or...
Let Greg finish his comment, though.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I guess my question is, if that's truly the case here, would we be better served holding off on that to make sure that that slope site doesn't require anything else that increases the cost on the back end that we didn't foresee?
Yeah.
Good question.
So, okay. This is Mark Rambacher, library trustee, and I've been participating heavily in the building. So I can answer, so there's two parts to this. One is when we asked for the $1.5 million number, we thought the CM at risk would come online earlier than he actually did, so that we were going to have more upfront expenses than we've incurred. We originally anticipated we'd be able to get the CM at risk online basically in June, and it was actually, I believe, January when we actually got them online because of state regulations and things like that. So some of the construction costs that we figured would happen up front didn't happen. So that's what part of the money is. Also, when we were going through the budget process, when we were going through with the CM at risk, doing some of the budget, some of the items, we ended up being over budget on some things, and some of the things were cut. One of the things that ended up having extra funds associated with it was the architect contingencies funds, which we didn't need because we didn't make major changes to the design afterwards. So there was extra money basically in the $1.5 million for the architect that's going towards the building site. As it stands right now, we have bids. So the way the CM at risk process works is they've started doing bids for the project now. Those bids are being reviewed. My understanding is the bids are fairly there's qualified sub bids and unqualified, and I don't understand all the differences here, but the bids look like they're fairly in line with what we're expecting for cost. And we expect to get a GMP, which is the guaranteed maximum price, from the CM at risk sometime later this week, I believe. So I don't think we have to worry about holding on to funds. I think we're on budget right now. This article was basically meant to, we asked for $14 million for the library, and the $1.5 million was our guess at the 8 to 10% number that we would need for typical building projects, and we didn't spend all of it. So this is just asking to move it, to be able to put all the money into the one bucket so that we can spend it either on construction or the remaining fees.
And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think my understanding was that typically this would have been written in, that's how that would have been written, that article last year, where we wouldn't even need this article because it would say any money not used for design can go into construction.
Yes, that was the original intent, and we just didn't get the language right. Stephen Udi caught us on the language later, and this is basically to fix the language.
So if we didn't support this, or this didn't move forward, that 1.5 would be used where, Cheryl?
For design only. So
All right. So if it's not used for design, it gets moved into free cash, or?
it just, there's the, eventually you would rescind the borrowing authorization, which effectively would reduce the total authorization for the library.
Now half of it's already been spent.
Right. So seven and change.
750 or something like that.
Right, which I think there are still some anticipated design costs, but not to the full 1.5 million.
So if we left this alone, we'd be able to pick up all those other design costs or any incidental design costs, and then at the end we could either vote to push it back into the library or vote to rescind it if we didn't take action at this town meeting.
The problem becomes that if the library budget, the project for the library budget was $12.5 million for the construction, plus this $1.5 million for the design, right? You're making the construction budget smaller. This original number effectively was a placeholder guess on our part on how much it was going to cost, and we overestimated it. When we went for the $14 million, we figured we had 14 million and we already had $1.5 million allocated. And now if you don't pass this article, we don't have the full 14. We have less than that.
Right.
Now we might come in 700,000 under budget at the end of this whole project, and then we can all.
But we've done that on several other projects, right? The fire station came in under budget, and there was some of it came back to the town, and some of it went to, you know, a few nicer bells and whistles in the fire department. That's sort of your reward for bringing it in under budget, right?
No.
Mhm.
The money from alumni got turned back over. We didn't get more bells or whistles.
We're not looking for bells or whistles at this point. We're just looking for the library.
We'll give you some rocks, Mark. How do you feel about rocks?
We'll take them.
All right. I just want to get all the questions answered. I'm not.
I guess what concerns me is, you know, we're off by 50% on the design. That's got to have some sort of an impact on the build, I would think.
But
that's Greg, a lot. I mean, it's not off $50,000. We're talking about half the cost of the design.
But that wasn't an estimated design number. That was just about 10% of the cost as a means of getting started. Nobody said the design was going to be any particular number. They just thought that 1.5 would be the absolute maximum of it.
Yeah, it's usually the design and construction of the building would be 14.1 million. But the way that it was written, it wasn't that way. So I know what you're saying, Greg. There's $700,000 plus dollars sitting out there that potentially could be used down the road, but it still could be used down the road if it isn't spent on the construction. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. But, you know, we're getting pressing times here, and we've got other departments worrying about funding, and you know, we've got $750,000 sitting here that, and I know it's earmarked for the project, but, you know, are we doing the right thing by just letting it go into the construction project and adding bells and whistles that weren't really originally planned for, or were planned for, were cut back, and now they want to add in?
There was some mistakes, or there were some issues with how the article was written last May. Is there something, to your point, Greg, that we could write into this article to assuage any concerns about bells and whistles?
It should be built as prescribed that we passed on town meeting floor last year.
So not to be used for any additional change orders, or, I mean, now if we're going to change the language, now's the time to change the language, if that's what we decide to do.
Well, here's the thing. It's going to go in front of town, and it needs a 2/3 vote. So your exact question could very well come up, Greg, and it might. A citizen might ask the same question you're asking. So I guess the point would be, if this does not pass by a 2/3 vote, what happens? It's not going to stop the construction of the library? No.
No. It's not.
But
That's it's built.
it because of the time, I'm a little bit more free with this one because of the timing of the library, when we needed to get this done by because of the grant. You're trying to make a best guess on that number, and I think it's probably a little bit looser than anyone would have liked. It would probably been a lot tighter if we were able to wait longer. That wasn't the case, but I absolutely understand your point, and I think there'll probably be several other people that have that exact concern, no doubt. So I think, but I don't know how you would rewrite it.
Right.
I mean, right. If we handle it like we handle all of our other construction projects, with the expectation that any unused funds come back to the town.
But any other construction projects haven't been during a COVID pandemic. You know, there's a lot of uncertainties, I guess. That's and I share a lot of Greg's concerns. That's why I was trying to offer up if there was some language that we could put in there that assuage some of those concerns. Because to your point, Gary, if Greg's raising the question, some others have have similar thoughts, and if in fact it comes up at town meeting floor, if we can try to answer some of those questions by recrafting the article.
I mean, I guess the answer is it's going to be used for the construction of the library. I mean, I don't know where else you can go with it.
But it was earmarked for.
I know.
Design.
Right.
So
That's
I mean,
why. Yeah, I get it. No, I understand.
So the issue was that we earmarked the money for design, and then when we put the article out for the special meeting in November, in the chaos of getting the article written for inside, outside, and all the discussion, it was missed by folks that we really needed to include the original article, or the funding for the original article, in that $14 million. So yes, it was an oversight that it didn't include that. And this is basically meant to clean up that oversight. We're not asking for any more money than was originally allocated for the library project, right? This is just allowing us to spend all of the money that was allocated. This $1.5 million, when we asked for it, we guessed high, and it was high, right?
Which is awesome, because now we've saved $750,000.
Well, no, when we asked for the $14 million, we figured out, we already knew then that we weren't likely to spend the full $1.5 million, right? Of this, we figured that we actually, if you look back at the town meeting presentations, we said we've already allocated $1.5 million to this project, and we're asking for the remainder, right? So we didn't think it was, separate buckets, so we can't take from one bucket and spend it in the other, right? That wasn't the intent, or we didn't. That wasn't the assumption at town meeting. The assumption at town meeting was we had the $14 million for the project, minus the fundraising, minus the grant, and part of that $14 million was the $1.5 million we already allocated. We didn't. It was an oversight that we couldn't use that money to actually pay construction costs.
Right. So the 1.5 mark is just getting applied towards the cost of construction of the new library. You're not adding it. Yeah. You're not adding in another 1.5 million worth of extras that weren't there before, right?
No, we're not.
Right.
No, Steve
But
Moore's
Mark, what if the 1.5? What if it cost you 1.5 to do all the design work? What if it came in at 1.6?
If it would,
you would have to do value engineering and other creative development buzzwords to make it come in
Yes.
on budget.
Well, but we would have known that in November when we were asking for this money, right? We had the
No, I don't know that it's
estimates.
right.
We had the estimates in November for how much everything was going to cost. And I don't think the numbers shifted that drastically between as far as design versus construction between what we had and what we are now. We've done a value engineering to make sure that we stay within the 14 million,
Good.
right? But we weren't considering that we had to stay within the 12 and a half. Yeah.
I'd like to hear from Steve a little bit on this, if we could.
So I'm coming into this a little late, so I see you guys are going around. If you remember the timeline that we did with this original borrowing article for the 1.5 million was done 2 years ago. We didn't really have a project cost, if you remember, until 2 days prior to this last special town meeting before the $14 million was known. The 1.5 million was a guesstimate by Steve Moore at the time as to what he would need for design. The article wasn't written properly. The article should have been design and construction. It was limited to just design for some reason. I mean, this is something that, I think this was the first town meeting when that article came that Keith wasn't there and Anthony was running it, and things just got lost in the cracks at that point in time. And nobody caught it. I mean, it went past by me, it went past, Keith was reviewing it at the time. He didn't really see it either. So this was just an oversight that the article was written incorrectly. We need to take that money, because it's all part of the $14 million project, and be able to take the unspent portion and put it toward the construction piece of the project. That's all there is. It's not increasing the 14.
What was the estimate, Steve, when it came in 2 days before the town meeting?
That was the 14 million one. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we borrowed
14,123, I think, Mark.
Yeah, it sounds right. I don't know the exact number.
Right, and we went to town meeting for 13.1, and we had this 1.5 million, so it was 14.6 then. 14.6 must be the total, because we took the total project cost that it came in at, less the 1.5 million, and that's what the article went in for this town meeting at the 13.1 to borrow. So adding the two together, it's coming to the total project cost. So their design costs, if I believe, if I'm remembering things correctly, they're probably spent around 800,000 so far on design.
Okay.
In talking with Steve Moore and Vertex, they really don't feel that they're going to be spending very much more on that, and certainly not $1.5 million. But the project is still the same cost. It's just
So what's been designed is all that's going to, we're not going to get change orders for a huge solar array on the roof or painted
But
rock garden.
no matter what it is, Chuck, it's still part of the project.
If it's part of the original project, right? Part of the
So
design.
they still can't spend more than the 14.6 or whatever is the total project cost, the 13.1 and the 1.5 million the town meeting is authorized. They can't.
We
go
authorize
above that
based upon a
unless they
design,
come
though.
back to town meeting.
Based upon a design, though. That's what was
Correct.
authorized, was the design that was put forward. So if there's other things that are being added in because there's an additional $750,000 now, that's, I think,
Chuck,
Greg,
there
correct me
isn't
if I'm
another
wrong.
$750,000.
Additional money. They're just
Greg, correct me if I'm
spending
wrong.
less
Is that
on one
what you were
portion
saying?
of it, and then they're going to reallocate that to the other portion of the total
Right.
project.
Yeah, they're not increasing it.
No.
This
Town
is
meeting voted
That's the question, Madam
14.6
Chair.
total.
So certainly,
That's what they get to spend.
I just want to go back to Mr. Chamney because this was his original question. Are you satisfied with Steve's response,
No,
Greg?
yeah, I understand what Steve has said, but my point was if there was up 1.5 million allocated for design, and now you want to move some of that over to the construction cost, does that mean that you're adding more to the construction project? Not meaning that the cost is going up, but because you found a savings on the design side, does that mean you're adding more to the project? Or could that be saved because you don't need to add it, but you want to because the money's there?
From what I saw, and Mark is on the call, maybe he can chime into, but on the construction documents that I saw, the total project was the 14.6, and of that 14.6, there was design money set aside as part of the overall project. It wasn't going to be $1.5 million in design from those last documents that I saw.
So then what we approved 2 years ago on town meeting floor was not accurate. And we're just trying to clean this up.
Right.
We sold the town a good bill of goods of $1.5 million for a design when it really wasn't $1.5 million for a design.
I don't think anybody really knew what design was going to be or how big the project was going to be when that original article went through. I mean, that's something that Steve would really have to discuss.
Can I just read something from Steve from an email that he wrote recently, which may help this?
Please.
He wrote that that was originally anticipated getting the CM at risk on board much earlier, but had to go through a lengthy approval process by with the Inspector General's office. Therefore, their anticipated costs had decreased, giving them a surplus in the pre-construction phase, which we need to transfer into the construction phase to pick up the back end of the CM at risk activities. So I think my understanding is this is largely driven by the CM at risk component of this project.
Which was something that was added kind of after the fact.
No, that was part of the 1.5
Right.
million design money.
Right.
That design money included the design and the CM at risk.
CM at risk came
Nobody
in after,
really
after
knew what
May
the
of
1.
18.
Say that again.
CM at risk came in after 18, after May of 18, after the vote for 1.5.
I don't think so.
That was introduced for last fall.
Mr. Glady?
Yeah, this is to whoever thinks they can answer it, Steve or Cheryl or whoever. The grant that we got from the state was predicated on the 14, whatever it is, $1 million figure. Do we risk a problem with the state if we reduce that amount in the funding phase, in effect jeopardize, do we risk jeopardizing the funding? Would they, are we setting ourselves up to have that number just reduced in our
No, because that's construction.
grant?
I mean, it's more of a question for Marcus.
No, it's for the construction, right?
Pardon?
The grant is for the construction.
Grant is
For
for
the
the
whole
project.
Yeah. The grant is for the whole project. What we risk is being, I'm going to just say $500,000 short in the construction and then having to cut something out that MPLC doesn't like and then jeopardizing the grant that way.
That makes sense.
Okay. Are there any more questions or concerns?
So just so I'm crystal clear on this, this movement of money is not adding to the project. It's just helping to finalize the project.
Correct.
Is that correct, Mr. Rombacher? Do I have that right?
14.6 in a bucket.
Yeah.
Of which 1.5 was design money.
So, yeah,
But it was in the big bucket, which was the project money.
right. So Mark, is Greg's summation correct?
Yes, we are not increasing this cost or scope of the project. We asked for the $1.5 million as a getting started money, and we didn't spend all of it as getting started, and we wanted to use it for finishing, basically. It was misworded when we originally asked for it. The project hasn't increased in scope or cost.
Is there any consequence for Steve Moore through all this? No good deed goes unpunished. Thanks for your volunteering, Steve.
Okay, so Greg,
Thanks for the clarification too.
Are you satisfied with that response?
I'm good at this point. I think we
Okay.
beat this one up pretty good.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, I believe you were asking for a motion?
We had a motion.
Betsy made a motion.
I was looking for a second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. no further discussion, I'll do a roll call vote with who's here. Betsy,
Betsy's yes.
Alan McRae, you're muted.
Nod. Nod vigorously, Alan.
Alan, you're muted.
Yes. Oh,
There you go. Good.
Gotcha.
We heard you.
there it. Ah.
Thank you. Tom,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and just me left. Gary is a yes. All right, thank you. And okay, that's the last article we had to vote on outside of the Park and Rec article that we were going to wait. So Cheryl, on Article 13, if you would, it will just say pending for the FinCom.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. Sorry about the wait.
No, is there
Thank you
anything
for your
else?
input, everybody. It was good discussion. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
do we have any other discussion as far as any of the financial articles that need FinCom's input? Or
Chief Procurement Officer article, maybe?
Nina, can you think of any?
I'm just scrolling through the articles right now, and I mean, the only thing that I can think of which may be of interest to the Finance Committee would be if there was a consolidation of articles, but I don't know if that's something that the board wants to take up, or if we try to continue to do this consent agenda that's been done in the past and try to move as many possible through that process.
I mean, given that you need to print it tomorrow, it seems like that would just be a logistical nightmare. And we'd be better off to allow the moderator to handle that.
Right. I agree with you. It would be a logistical nightmare.
But you're up to it.
We've cleared schedules. We've cleared schedules, including Tom Harrington's.
Well, we're still going to go forward with the calling of the
feeling it.
articles, correct, at town meeting, so,
right, and we place a hold if someone has.
right, so in some respects, that
I
helps.
don't envy the person who places a hold on anything.
No.
As long as they don't spit it all over everybody. So I did want to say that, Betsy had made a request earlier about historically, we didn't do this last year, and I don't remember why. FinCom, the chair and usually the vice and Cheryl would be part of this. We would do an LCTV, normally at LCTV, but we'll have to do it probably through a Zoom. And it just airs on TV as we go over each article and just kind of discuss it real briefly on what it is, and just kind of give the knowledge to the viewer on each article.
A lot of that, Greg, was actually about Gary, about the budget itself, going through the budget itself, and just any highlights and things we wanted to explain to people ahead of time.
Yeah,
educate the voter.
And it does help. I think it will help this year, especially. I'm glad Betsy brought it up because a year where a lot of people aren't getting a lot of information, this will only help, when we get to town meeting, less questions, less on the floor. Hopefully we can answer some of those up front. But I haven't talked to LCTV, Mark, and everybody to see if it's doable. But we'll try to.
I know Mark is on the line right now, but I can guarantee you he would be excited for this opportunity. And I think there could be more use of this as well. I mean, Mark has been asking that we do these kinds of things in normal times, never mind in a pandemic where we might want to do these kinds of things to limit the amount of time at town meeting. But that's a policy decision of the board.
Yeah. Okay.
And in this case, it may also be making people comfortable. If they don't feel comfortable coming to town meeting, even if it's outdoors, they feel a little more comfortable with what we're voting on.
Right, because when you get the booklet in the mail, a lot of it doesn't make whole lot of sense to everybody. And if we're discussing the budget and how it all fits together, then hopefully we can answer some of those questions in that half-hour show we put on or whatever it is.
It's a great idea. So you're going to coordinate with Mark on that, Gary?
Yeah, Cheryl, Mark, and Betsy and I will see if we can put it together, and Kirby or whoever else needs to be involved.
All right, great.
Anything, so Board of Selectmen already voted on all the articles last week?
All but one.
Okay. All right. I think we're probably good then. I know Paul brought up the procurement
CPO
question. So, I mean, I'll hang around for that, but I won't ask the board, the rest of FinCom to hang around for that unless they want to, and they have some discussion they want to bring up regarding that position.
Okay,
And this was specific to where it resides, etc.
right. Okay, so thank you very much, Gary. Thank you, Cheryl, and everyone for participating. So we are on to item number 6, which is the annual town meeting warrant and report discussion. And it is relative to Article 28, change of the bylaws with respect to Chief Procurement Officer. So there was some discussion regarding, so just to back up and get everybody up to speed on this, what transpired was at one point, we had a assistant town administrator, director of budget and finance was one position that was held by Bonnie at the time. It was decided amongst the board at that time that position be broken into 2 different positions. In one respect, the administrative function of that position would be turned over to the assistant town administrator, which was a new position that was created by the town and held by Anthony Ansaldi, and that the finance aspect of that position would remain with Bonnie, who was the director of finance and budget at the time. So the board took that initiative, created, split the positions, hired Anthony, but there weren't changes made to our bylaws in conjunction with that decision by the board. So right now there exists an inconsistency in the bylaws, don't mirror the positions that we currently have in town hall. So what we're trying to do is we need to rectify those discrepancies. And there was some discussion amongst the board, and Nina had brought forward a motion proposing that she be designated as the chief procurement officer for the town of Littleton, with the ability to then assign that title to another employee as she would seem fit. The board was not in agreement with that proposal. They strongly feel that the assistant town administrator holds the title of chief procurement officer. That's in the assistant town administrator's job description. It was the position that we advertised for when we hired Anthony, and when we hired Joe Layton. It was a core function of that position. So there's just been some discussion going back and forth with respect to this article in particular, and how we as a board want to move forward and see it presented before the town of the voters. So I know, Nina, you had just, I think, popped up on the screen. I had drafted some proposed language. You had proposed language. So
yep. I have yours incorporated into here. And I have a proposed explanation as well. I think there was one difference between the one that you proposed and the one that's here. And you and I talked about that. That's just replacing the section that's being struck with the word reserved, so that it can just tie up that line for future use if there is ever to be an addition to that, and so that it doesn't leave the lettering off, or the other alternative would be to adjust the lettering.
Right. And that was made at the recommendation of town council, correct?
Yes, the article was written by town council from the very beginning. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So I'm going to open up to the board. Do you have any comments or questions?
Under this construct, Cindy, does the assistant town administrator have the authority to delegate that role, or is it solely the assistant town administrator?
It's solely the assistant town administrator.
So allow me to clarify that, if I may.
Sure.
Under Mass General Law, Chapter
Right.
30B, any chief procurement officer has the authority and right to delegate procurements under 30B only to other departments. So for instance, if the school department were to receive a delegation, the chief procurement officer could do so. And that would be very much in line with the town's practice and what is ordinarily done in other towns, which would be to give the school department their own responsibility to do their own procurements under Chapter 30B. So we're not getting involved in their purchases of pens and pencils and paper. The same could be done with other departments if it was appropriate and if the chief procurement officer felt that that department had either the training or the need to be able to have that delegation. Other procurement chapters and sections can't be delegated, regardless of how any bylaws are written. 149, which discusses the construction of public buildings, Chapter 3039M, which discusses public works construction, and 7C, which discusses design contracts for public buildings. Now, and so it wouldn't matter whether it was written in the bylaw or not.
It's whoever is named as the CPO
Exactly.
has the ability to delegate, and it can be on a case by case. It can be they can kind of deputize folks.
Yep.
To act in that capacity.
Or state statute.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to add on, it's the position. So we can't just say it's Jack over in the school department. It has to be to the position.
Right.
Right.
Business manager or right. Exactly.
Right.
Okay,
And
and
there
I
is
thought,
only one chief procurement officer also in case.
and I thought there was one other section, Nina, that we had to change as well.
There was, so there, the next section is, it says by striking, if you can see my cursor, it says 3 and it's crossed out in number 2 now because we're deleting line 2.
Mm-hmm.
By striking the words assistant town administrator for finance and budget in the section where PMBC's authority is discussed, because that section specifically discusses who is going to co-sign a contract. And in this case, it's proposed that it be the assistant town administrator co-sign the contracts with the chair of the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. That works fine as long as the assistant town administrator and the town administrator are communicating properly.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other questions by the board? And the only thing that I'll follow up with on the board with respect to this is that we do need to still update our policies, the selectmen's policies and regulations now to mirror this change, but we need to do this, bring this before the voters first and have this approved at town meeting, and then we can circle back and amend up, update our policies accordingly.
Is the board comfortable with the explanation that's shown here? Because this is new and you haven't had a chance to review that.
I can read it on the screen. Oh, good. Please, more of that. But
I know how it feels on the other side, and even I don't. Anyway.
So these are for.
My comment on this, Nina, would be that I might take out the negative statement and just say that it changes the responsibility to rest with the assistant town administrator by virtue of the job description. Right. Otherwise, we get, yeah, it engenders complicated bureaucratic questions to say why we're taking it from one and moving it to the other.
If I could, Madam Chair, so this was not on the town administrator's position description?
No. It's on the assistants. It's not on the town administrators.
Interesting.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Thank you for your effort in this, Cindy. I think it captures the intent of what when we changed, we split Bonnie's role into two roles. I think this is exactly the intent we had, was that the chief procurement officer would reside with the assistant town administrator, whether it be as described in the job description, but now it's codified, and we've kind of, just like in the previous discussion relative to the library, we had some editorial errors. We've caught Keith on two tonight, by the way. But I think this helps to clarify things and eliminate any confusion.
Okay. All right, any more discussion on this agenda item?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we are on to item 6B, review the warrant, reopen the warrant, place articles, close the warrant, determine order of articles, vote recommendation, and finalize the town meeting report.
And can I just jump in here for a quick second? There was a realization I had with an article that did change that could affect the finance committee. Gary, are you reaching out to members to see if they'd like to jump on? Apologies.
It looks like I might have lost a few more while I.
Yeah.
Yeah, no juice. This, you know what? Let's see which one it is, and if it's something that I can,
Sure.
we have to, once again, if we have to do this on town floor, it's an easy explanation. If an individual brings it up, why didn't FinCom vote on this? We'll just say we
Right.
voted on it right before town meeting. So
This is a property tax exemption for Gold Star parents.
okay, so you added Gold Star to it.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep, that's material change for sure. Wow. Yeah, that's
Perhaps
fantastic.
members would be willing to jump back on. I see Greg's still here.
I may have dragged him back kicking and screaming, though.
Did your meeting ever close, Gary? Did you guys close your meeting or not? I mean, having them back is one thing, but if it's not, if you're not still in a meeting mode.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't officially close it.
Good, all right, then get a couple of them back.
The one time a technicality works for us.
Yeah.
So while we're working to get them back, would the board like me to start from the beginning? Many of the changes that are shown here do not capture the full changes, but again, with exception of the Gold Star addition, there was no change in intent. And the only one that I think had any level of material wording changes would have been the personnel bylaw, and I would point that out to you all. But if you want to start from the top, we can start from the top. If you want me to go straight to the personnel bylaw, I can do that too.
Can I ask a quick question there, Nia? All of these changes were in red line in our packet version, right?
No, unfortunately, the red line went away at one point, and we just captured additional red lines that came in. I could pull up probably the versions and have two versions here.
It's already getting late. I'll take it at face value that it's just the personnel board one. I didn't see anything else in the red line versions that I thought was substantive.
Let me give you a kind of a flavor for what those changes might have been. There was in Article 4, there was the insertion of the word undesignated fund balance. You see it here as if it was just taken from lowercase letters to uppercase letters, but that was actually inserted here because previously there was an error and it didn't capture that source, that funding source. But all of these, this is an example of something that's full within the intent and is just done to make sure that the article is executable at town meeting.
Which seems to be something we need to tighten up in places.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're good at this point. We've done those things, and some of these things are style. So when town council went through it recently, he took undesignated fund balance that was in lowercase letters and made them all uppercase letters and put in the word "the" before everything for style and consistency. And then going to, takes a while to scroll through this one. Going to Article 5, there wasn't any material change there. Article 6, somehow the language got dropped, but this was always the language that you had previously, with 149,000 going to TRED. I'm just going to keep moving along. Town council changed some wording here. He inserted the language about Article 7 and November 1st, 2016 special town meeting, and Article 6, November 1st, 2016 special town meeting. Again, another example of changes to wording that don't make any material difference to the intent of the article. No changes to Article 9. Town council did make some changes to the initial wording here. For instance, Mass General Law was written differently, but for style and consistency, he made it Mass General Law with the abbreviation. He did also make some changes to the Montechusett Regional Authority by actually spelling it out. He capitalized some lettering that was in these different sections that included, you know, just simple typographical changes. I don't believe that there were any material changes to Article 11 or 12, or any changes for that matter. I think I removed a period that was located here on both. Article 13, we did add the word approximately here as opposed to up to, in case it was greater than 465,000, depending upon decisions with the beach. And I don't believe that there are any other material changes here of any sort or even typographical. For Article 14, there was a number that was off that is shown here. It's actually 1,186,648 as opposed to 1,181,648. Article 15, Town Council made some changes in the way that this was listed. There was a number 1 and a number 2 here before. He took those out. I will say, overwhelmingly, the changes were Town Councils or through Cheryl and Steve.
And as long as they're not substantive, we can probably just jump to the
I really
personnel.
I really don't see them as being substantive. I don't even see the personnel bylaw as being substantive, but that one is more of a change that I wanted to call to your attention, even though it makes the same conclusion.
Okay.
So I'm just scrolling down really quick. I'm not sure when the Affordable Housing Trust's Littleton Affordable Housing Trust line amount came in, if that was at the last meeting or the meeting prior, I mean, or between that last meeting and this
The
meeting.
CPC just voted that in at their last meeting, yeah.
So that may be new. Article 18, I don't believe that there were any changes there. Article 19, this is the same concept. Now, this is the personnel bylaw, obviously. This is the same concept as we had before, but the difference that's made here is it actually corrects to ensure that the personnel board's authority isn't broader than what was intended. The way it was worded before, Steve Venuti pointed out that it actually would allow the personnel board the authority to change the grid and the numbers within the grid, and that was not the intent. So town council reworded this section to ensure that the personnel board could only add jobs and change grades, but that they could not change the grid without a vote of town meeting. Okay. There was also a nurse and a custodian added to C1 by recommendation of the Park and Recreation Commission and acceptance by the Personnel Board for their expected camp requirements. And that's really it.
Okay.
And then
Gary
the
did.
only
sorry,
other piece, no problem. I was just going to come up with bring up the gold star piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to do this on the floor. It's not, it's not a controversial article at all, so I don't think it'll be a problem. But we'll vote it on town floor.
So Gary, would your preference be that I remove finance committee for purposes of fairness at this point?
You could just put pending, or
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll figure out how we've done that in the past.
yeah, it's finance committee vote pending.
Okay.
Forthcoming.
Forthcoming. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Greg.
I took him off mute.
Yeah,
Good for something.
been correcting my English since 4th grade.
Third.
You math too.
Okay.
So this is not going to be a very popular argument here, but I question whether we should do this. And let me lay out the basis for it real quick. It really, I guess the issue is we don't favor particular tragedies in our property tax code. And there's no doubt that this is a tragedy, but it seems like a very inconsistent manner of handling such a tragedy. And I further have an issue with it that it's not at all means tested. There's no threshold, there's no cap, there's no anything to it. And so this is one flavor of tragedy, but there's so many others that it just seems really odd to put this in our town bylaws when we're not recognizing all of the other types of tragedies, I guess. And property taxes seems like a really poor way to do it.
What other tragedies are there where people have laid down their life for the freedom of all citizens or all residents? It's a pretty unique tragedy.
The net result of a parent losing a child, though, is not a unique tragedy.
No, but someone laying down their life for their country is.
In a purely legalistic standpoint, I mean, the reason that we even are entertaining this is it's in state law, and other tragedies, whatever, they're not provided for in law. Here we have a chance to act on something that's essentially already been established. We're just adopting it, correct? I mean,
That's correct.
And we do adopt other exemptions in our bylaws as they are available to us for seniors, and I believe is a veterans disability, various other things that are not a full exemption, but
Partial exemptions, right. Yep. Surviving
our
spouses.
guidance is what's allowed for in state law, and this is fairly new too, isn't it? In state law, is that am I correct on that?
It is. It just came out last year.
But the difference I see between those, Paul, is that those are directly related. Those other ones are directly related to a person's ability to earn income and pay their property taxes, whereas this one isn't. If this was a property tax exemption related to the spouse or dependents, that I think that would be a different argument, but that's not the case.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think surprised spouse wouldn't be the more, in your example, Chase, the spouse of an individual that died in service.
Spouse, children, I shut up and go home here. I think that's very reasonable. My issue is...
I understand what you're saying.
Why this applies to parents or guardians.
Right. So we do have exemptions for spouses.
Okay.
That we've already adopted in our town bylaws. This is specific, what they
Above
refer
and
to,
beyond.
what they refer to as Gold Star parents.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's a great program. I'm very familiar with this.
Unfortunately.
Not just with the town side, but just like I think what Paul mentioned, this is something that at a state level, there's some state exemptions as well that go along with this.
Yeah, chapter 115.
Yep. So, but
If I wasn't clear, just to be more specific, we aren't even allowed to play around with the state
Yes.
code, tax code, except to the extent that the legislature, gives us that authority. This is one instance where they do give us that authority in fairly recent vintage, and I hear Chase's arguments, and they're legitimate. I just think there's important symbolism personally here, and it's not a major financial impact on the town, but I'd be inclined to support it, and I don't believe that opens up the whole cadre of, well, what about all these other instances? We don't have those, we don't even have the opportunity to discuss some of those things in this context because we don't have the legal authority to do anything about it. This we do.
And I'm not suggesting we should, Paul. My point is that this is that this itself is an outlier in that regard. And the appropriate course of action, in my opinion, would be to not adopt it. I understand very much that is it rings poorly, and very much understand where everyone is coming from here in terms of the support it provides and the symbolism that it engenders, or the that it represents, and the goodwill that it engenders. And I also recognize it's not a big financial hit to the town.
okay. Does any other, is Joe still on the call? Joe, I don't know if you had any comments you wanted to share about this.
I don't have to see the same problem with it. It's great symbolism, and it doesn't cost the town a lot of money.
Okay.
And it's spread out, yeah. And I mean, the one, I think Mashpee I think it's either 4 or 6 Gold Star families, and that's the largest in the state of Massachusetts. I don't see it as being, from a financial standpoint, having any kind of a burden on the town. It's spread out over the residents, and I think that we would get a large majority of residents that would support this and be more than willing to offset a Gold Star parents' real estate taxes.
Right.
For a couple extra dollars on their tax bill.
Right.
Which is what it is.
My opinion is if we can do it, we have the ability to do what we should do it and support it. So, okay, so we are so all the articles are now placed on the warrant. Were there any,
well, do we want to take a vote to determine whether or not we support that, or?
Do you want to?
That wasn't part of the original warrant, right?
Correct.
No, no. So that's where I was going.
Right,
with
we
that.
would have to reopen, and then, because we already supported that article in its previous incarnation, no?
You did. I mean, there would be one way to do it is you've got to address the chief procurement officer article, which wasn't previously voted. There's this article. I wanted to just quickly point out a couple of other minor changes since we went through every other article until 24, if you'd be so inclined. Go ahead.
Just 1 second, if I may, Nina. So we haven't decided on the order of the articles. So I didn't know if we were going to vote them, if we're going to change the order, it would change the article number, correct?
Yes.
So we should probably have that discussion. Does anyone have any thoughts on the order of the articles?
I think we can even just when we, as voted as Article 24, that's as, we can change the order and renumber them.
Yeah, it was understood to be what it was at the time.
Right.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Nina. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Thanks. So just Article 24, there was a question of whether or not the actual 30 pages of the form-based code needed to be attached to the town meeting report, and town council did indicate that because it's accessible to the public by a link, and we did clarify the link to actually be the direct link in this case, residents have access to it and can look it up. And while they'll be getting it in printed copy, it'll also be online and will be directly linkable when, if and when residents are viewing it directly online. At the request of the planning board, there are a couple of maps that were added. There is the Village Common Mixed Use District boundary in the town of Littleton that's shown, as well as the aspirational illustration for Village Common. And I think that's it on Article 24. Article 25, there have been no changes except for, I think, one minor change to some wording somewhere by town council. Article 26, it's not shown here because late in the day, it was identified that the actual borrowing amount of $3 million should be stated in either the article or the motion. And I'm going to try to incorporate it in the article. And I've drafted the board's motion in such a way that it allows, should you be willing to do so, the flexibility for town council and myself to make minor typographical changes before publishing the town meeting warrant tomorrow morning, a town meeting report tomorrow afternoon. Article 27, nothing there. We talked about Article 28 and Article 29, nothing there, but though town council did change the format again of Mass General Law and the way it was written. So perhaps the board, to Chairwoman Napoli's point, would be willing to discuss the order of the articles. And then after that, one way to do it is rescind your prior vote and then just vote them all in, make it as simple as possible, or just vote them all in because it's got a new date.
That sounds good to me.
Do we have a problem with the current order?
I don't think there's anything controversial.
Yeah, I haven't given it much thought.
I mean, it generally follows our standard order anyway. I don't see any reason to monkey with it.
Yeah, I always hate to play around with that anyway,
Especially at 10 of 10.
Right.
Right.
I'm signing off at 10. All right. I'm out.
Turn into a pumpkin?
Yep.
Okay.
One thing I do want to bring to the board's attention, don't know, Paul, if this is something you'd rather be taken up afterwards or before. Don't want to miss the opportunity, though. The board at the last meeting asked for town election information to be included. Do you want to touch on that now or after 10 o'clock?
See you, Paul.
To me, I don't care.
Well, do you want to be part of the conversation if it happens after 10 o'clock?
Well, I was being a bit facetious on that, but I do hope we'll wrap things up quickly. Let's just move forward, all right?
Okay.
Nina doesn't quite speak Levy yet.
Yeah.
Right, so just tell me what I'm talking about and I'm happy to go through it.
Okay, so we're all set. No one has a question about we were going to include the election.
Educate people on the election.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I don't feel the need to review it. I'm comfortable with the fact that Nina and Joe probably put it together well with Diane's help, and we're
right.
I will say a couple of quick things. Because I think it's important for you to know. I will say I took most of this off of Diane's already done website information.
Perfect.
The day in which this goes out, the last day to register to vote will have already basically passed. So people will be receiving this town meeting booklet at a point in which you can no longer register to vote. And I think that's an important point to make. That wouldn't be highlighted, but I highlighted that for the purposes of this discussion.
So then why don't we just take it out?
I think we still want them to register, even if it is passed.
To note
broadly.
that
Yeah, that's true. Well, but the date will already be passed.
Oh, yeah, no, I guess, we can't say it that way.
It still lets people know what the date was, so they don't try to go down and register afterwards.
Yeah, it says was right in there. You covered it. Done.
Right.
Okay, there we go.
So then the other thing that would come into play is submitting an application to receive an early ballot. This is the only other thing I think that needs to be brought to the board's attention, which is if you're seeking to utilize this, the early ballot application process, please allow ample mailing time for this application and for the ballot. We advise submitting the application to the town clerk's office by no later than June 5th, 2020. So that will mean that residents receiving this town meeting booklet will have a period of roughly, depending upon when they get it in the mail, because it would actually go out of the post office on the 29th. If they get it on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, could be as few as 4 or 3 days before that option closes as well.
I appreciate that you think people are going to open this the day they get it.
I just want to.
Isn't that adorable? Right? That's cute.
Based on the fact that the board asked this to be put in the warrant and discovering these issues, that's why I'm calling it to your attention.
Right.
Sure.
Well,
That seems like a reasonable amount of time to me.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think we still need to include the information. And there's certainly mechanisms that they can expedite getting the application and returning it to Diane. And as long as the ballot is returned back to her prior to town meeting, there's still a window there.
Okay, so that's it. That's all I wanted to go over with the board on that. So assuming you're not changing the order of the articles,
no.
would you like to just start, would you like me to stop screen sharing so Mark can screen share and we can go through the motion for setting the warrant?
Right.
Okay.
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 I tried to create some anticipation of how this would occur by highlighting Monday, June 15th, so it could be changed. And also, you can disregard the brackets at the bottom because the publication date is still Tuesday, May 19th.
Okay. Okay, so
We need that motion, do we?
yeah, yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, let me squint and see what I got here. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, and Town Code, Section 441-1, to reopen the warrant for the Monday, June 15, 2020 annual town meeting, to insert articles. Do we have a number there?
What are the numbers, Nina?
1 to 32. Sorry, 1
To
to
insert articles 1 to 32 on the
1
annual
to
town.
29. Sorry,
1 to what?
29.
To 1 to 29 on the annual town meeting warrant, and to immediately close said warrant, said town meeting to be held in the Charles Forbes K Gymnasium, Littleton Middle School, 55 Russell Street, actually, or Alumni Field. It's going to be at Alumni Field, correct?
Scratch that, yeah.
Correct.
All right, so ignore that. And authorize the town administrator working with town council to make minor typographical edits to the warrant and town meeting report for publication on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020.
And just one, well, I guess there should probably be a second there.
Second, 55 Russell Street will stay in there though, right, with Alumni Field?
Yeah, that's a detail that I needed to figure out. So if that's the answer, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing I think that Paul, you might have said was the June 15th town meeting. I would suggest we revise that to the Saturday, June 13th town meeting.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Do we want to put a rain date of June 14th in there?
That's up to the moderator. He'll just move it to the 14th.
Yeah, I would It was just reading what was there. I assumed since it was read, it was the amended
sick.
language, and
Well,
my
to
brain
that
already
end,
shut off. Yeah.
to that end, not to extend this much longer, does the board wish to make a written notice of the rain date in the report itself?
Should
Yes.
be, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, be advised where this is an outdoor event,
Right, okay.
subject to fair weather.
Do you
Yada,
see
yada.
that?
Make
This
it
is
sound
another
awesome.
technicality. I just want to make sure that the board's happy with the location and where it sits. I would probably propose putting it on the front page at the bottom in parentheses.
Wherever you have the date,
Yeah.
date and time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, just, right. That's fine. And however. you
Gates
wanna
open at
word it.
7 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah, town meeting.
Some details from Diane and fold it in.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion has been made, it's been amended, it's been seconded, correct? Is there any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck is aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glady,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved by the board. We're good to go. Okay, so we're all set. We're all finished with that, correct, Nina?
Yes.
If it rains both days, Tim will take care of that, and right.
Right.
I think we'll have discussions in advance of that. If we're seeing rain in the weather for both days for some reason, then we'll
That'd be
probably
awesome.
end up needing to.
Okay. All right, so we're on to item number 7, the Harvest Club for cultivation site, 1 Marnock. Discuss outline
So
and next step.
I'll jump in here. I'll keep it brief. I apologize. I did send to Nina and Joe a copy of a draft HCA that the Harvest Club, kind of clever THC, the Harvest Club, that they used with another community. They also offered that if we are more comfortable starting with or using the same HCA that Sanctuary uses for their cultivation site, that they would be amenable to that. They also mentioned that they would be, Chase, I think, had made a point relative to some sort of bond that would ensure that any smells or anything, any kind of mitigation for those kinds of nuisances would be implemented. And they didn't have those in there, but they said that they've already let their council know and that they have no problem with adding those into a final copy. So you've got both copies. Unfortunately, they just came to you today, so I don't expect we're going to do anything with them today. I just wanted to get you guys something to look at.
Can we talk real quick about the community impact fee structure? Because I did get a chance to take a look at that,
Okay.
which is largely all I had looked at.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me if the community impact fee, if they're paying 3% on the first 4 million, 2% on the next 2, and 1% for everything over that, or if they're paying 3% if the revenue is 0 to 4, 2% if the revenue is 4 to 6, and 1% of the total if it's more than 6. And that's important because they could actually save themselves a lot of money by having $4,001 worth of revenue because they jump up into the 2%. So my sense is that only makes sense. Someone would probably only sign that if it's 3% of the first 4 and 2% of the next 2 and 1% everything thereafter. But it needs some kind of clarification there because I couldn't find anything in the language to tell me which way that should read.
Chase, I'm probably going to reach out to you just to tighten up that question, but I'll definitely reach out to them. And, yeah.
Does that make sense though?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question on it was related to, there's a community benefit payment, and I think we got to run that through council because my recollection is the CCC is pretty prickly about other financial. My understanding is like Sanctuary's HCA would no longer be acceptable.
Right.
So it's only $5,000. It's probably not a lot in the grand scheme of things to them, but those are my only comments.
Okay, Chuck, so we'll take a look at what you circulated to the board earlier today.
Yeah, give me any comments, any questions, anything you guys think should or shouldn't be in there. Just like, Chase had a couple comments there. By all means, just push those back to me and we'll operate from there.
Okay, great. All right, perfect. So we're on to item number 8, Town Administrator.
Thank you. We have a number of items here, and I do actually have a motion for the first one, though it doesn't show on the slide here, unfortunately. We have a number of items, but I think they're all pretty quick. I can share the motion for, if the board wants to see it on a slide. It was also in the executive session packet.
I've got it, Nina, from the packet that was delivered. If it's the same language, I could just read that.
Is. Yep, it is.
All right.
I mean, I don't think we need any further discussion on the settlement agreement. That's been discussed unless the board wishes to discuss it in any way.
If you're ready for a motion, Madam Chair.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Move that the board vote to approve in open session the settlement agreement with O'Laller Painting and Remodeling and payment of funds due for work performed.
And to allow the town administrator to sign the agreement?
Okay, yep, that's not in my written copy, but we did agree to that. And yes, and as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Ms. Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved as written. Next item, Nina?
Thank you. We have our annual renewal for the intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough with the work that they received from LCTV. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Things are going well. Kirby reports that LCTV is Boxborough TV is very happy and continue along.
Great. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
None.
Okay, then I'll take a motion.
Okay, move that the board vote to approve the renewal of IMA from intermunicipal agreement from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Cindy Napoli is aye. Motion is approved as written. Item number C, Nina, please.
Thank you. There are documents in the packet from Laval Sands regarding a driveway relocation as well as a scent document to be signed. This is something that the town of Littleton has deeded interest in and is something that we would need to authorize. And Joe, I don't know if you want to jump in and clarify or provide any additional information since you looked at it more closely.
This is pretty much an administrative, just authorizing you to sign off on something that is really of no impact to us, although we do have a deeded interest in a lot of the Cobb property, and we were part of that original recording. Basically, they're just looking to move the location of the driveway, and if I'm seeing this correctly, I reached out to Mr. Sands, and I know that he has been in front of Conscom, and Conscom voted in favor of this. But in order for us to move forward, we have to have an authority, either the Board of Selectmen, or we can empower the town administrator to sign off on this so that it can in fact be recorded so that he can sell his property.
Mr. Sands is raising his hand, and if you'd like, I can allow him to talk to describe. I did put up through screen share just the indication as far as where those two easement areas are.
Yeah, and again, no impact to the town. It's literally an administrative. But if he's raising it vigorously, I would say that, Madam Chair, I would recommend that we bring him in.
Sure.
Hello, Mr. Sands?
What? Laval?
Well, you went there. There you go.
Yes, I am. No, I just raised my hand in the event you had any questions. It was really just a slight movement of the driveway for aesthetic purposes and for better access and appeal to the neighborhood. It was signed originally by Keith Bergman, a former administrator of the town. So as to keep everything consistent, it was advised that the selectmen also sign it or have authorization given to the town administrator for the present town administrator, Nina, to sign on the selectmen's behalf. Simply put.
Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you very much.
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
I am.
Okay. Move that the board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the Cobb Lane driveway relocation agreement.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. Thank you. And item number, letter D, Nina?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a donation that was made from the Middlesex Savings Charitable Foundation to the police department. And there's corresponding information in the packet.
Great.
I think this is, Madam Chair, if I may, I think this is awesome because this is something where an employee of the savings bank nominated the department for this donation. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
It's not
what a
their
great
first
program.
donation this year either. I think they've donated earlier. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think they also gave, I don't know if they gave to the councils on aging as well.
They've been yeah,
Very generous, good, nice,
yeah,
nice
we've got
business
some
partners.
good financial institutions in town that understand community.
Right. So we are ready for a motion?
All right. Move that the board vote to accept the $760 donation from Middlesex Charitable Foundation to the Littleton Police Department.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And letter E, please, Nina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board knows, the board discussed at its last executive session some of these benefits that were rolled out to employees, understanding the difficult scenarios that COVID-19 has presented. This is to memorialize those decisions and to essentially vote. One change you might want to add, depending upon the board's comfort level on this, and I'm just looking at this now, it currently is written to say, move that the board vote in open session to approve increased vacation carryover limits. You might specify up to 2 weeks because that was, I think, the criteria, and usage of short-term disability bank.
Okay. Ready for the motion?
I am.
Okay. Move that the board vote in open session to approve increased vacation carryover limits up to 2 weeks and usage of short-term disability bank.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written and amended. Thank you, Nina. And so we are on to
minutes.
All right, everybody have a chance to look them over? All right, otherwise, I'll make a motion. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the meeting minutes of April 27th, 2020 and May 4th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Cindy Napoli is aye.
What's the matter?
It's too late.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes have been approved, and that concludes our meeting for this evening.
Short one.
Short one. Do we have a
Welcome
motion
aboard,
to
Madam Chair.
adjourn?
We sure do. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Excellent. Mr. DeCoste,
Chuck's eye.
Oh, gosh, Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Checks aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy is aye. Excellent. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you, Nina
Stay
and
safe,
Joe.